IB Nation, Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Happy Wednesday. It is May 28th. Cannot believe it is already almost June. This offseason is flying by. Absolutely flying by. On one hand, it's positive because we're that much closer to Notre Dame kicking off against Miami on August 31st. I don't know where my girl Karen's at with the countdown. I know it'll probably get a little bit more consistent in here once we get a little bit closer to the season. On one hand, we're closer to Notre Dame kicking off. On the other hand, there's a lot of stuff on the IB side of the table that we still have to talk about as this offseason goes along. But before we get there, ladies and gentlemen, it is buy, sell, hold day. That's what we do here Wednesdays at Irish Breakdown. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar, this is something that we like to do to our premium message board subscribers. You see it scrolling down there at the bottom of the screen. boards.irishbreakdown.com. Our guy Salty puts together a thread on the premium message boards in the Champions Lounge. And basically the premise of the show is our message board members will submit a topic, a question, a scenario, and after some discussion, Brian and I will decide whether we buy the premise, we sell it, or we hold it because we might just not know. We need a little bit more information, need to wait for things to play out. Friendly reminder, this isn't a mailbag, so just putting it in the chat won't get answered because we have a lot of really good buy, sell, hold submissions every single week. However, if you didn't have enough time to get your submission in before this show kicked off today, you can always put in a super chat. Those are greatly appreciated to get your buy, sell, hold answered. But as always, I would always just roll that super chat over into a monthly membership for the premium message boards. But we got a lot of good submissions today, Brian. I'm ready to rock and roll. What say you?
Man, I am always ready to get rolling on this, man. And, you talk by saying, well, before we get to all those things we want to talk about, we got to do buy, sell, hold. And I'm like, that's kind of part of the fun of the buy, sell, hold in the mailbags is because there's things that we get to talk about, but it's like, it's what I like about the change up is not just the format difference, but it's like, hey, we're talking about what you guys are interested in. The other days, it's like, we talk about what we're interested in and we think you'll be interested in it. But the thing I love about this is all the submissions, like literally every question, every submission we respond to, every question we do on a mailbag is something that you're interested in. At least one person is interested in because that's why they submit it. But no, this is always fun and it helps it helps the summer grind go by and it's a lot of fun. And then, my guy, Brandon Plesner, would have buy, sell, hold submission before we even get started. He's got a super chat ready to rock and roll. So, because he took your advice, he was a little late getting it onto the board. So he's going with a super chat. Appreciate you, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame needs a dual threat quarterback commit in the 2027 class.
Need a sell that they need it. Yeah, I think I know where you're going from on this one, Brandon. And if you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm kind of a fan of the notion of I like to counter my quarterback types, unless like there's only one type of quarterback that can fit in my offense. Like if I'm recruiting for Navy's offense, if I'm recruiting for Army's offense, there's really only one kind of quarterback that I'm going to go after. But in Mike Denbrock's offense or if I'm in an air raid offense, then I'm going to recruit it differently than I would if I'm in a different type of offense, maybe. But in the offense that Mike Denbrock runs, I think you can have just a pure drop back guy that's smart, great arm, great decision maker that can shred in Mike Denbrock's offense. But you can also have a dual threat guy. And then, of course, there's a lot of things in between. I like to have sort of my personal preferences, kind of balancing those two, so you got a Noah Grubbs who's more of a pocket passer in 26, 25, Blake Hebert's more of a dual threat guy, but, passer first, but good runner. So then it would make sense for 27 to be more of a dual threat guy. That's what I like, Brandon. So like, I think you and I are on the same page of what my preference would be, but your buy, sell, hold is that they need that type of player. And my thing is the only thing that they need in 27 is a really talented guy that can run this offense. Whether that's a pure drop back guy or whether that's a dual threat guy, I don't really care. I just want a high level guy. Now, the good news is a lot of the guys on the board are at the very least a CJ Carr type, meaning even the guys that are passers, like Peter Bork's I wouldn't count Peter Bork as a dual threat. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch his film yet, Trev, but he's not a dual threat. But like CJ Carr, he's athletic and he can move around and do things with his legs, but he's not a guy you're going to be like, well, he might be able to fit into the offense the same way that Riley Leonard does. And you won't We have a Bisa hold submission about a package with Blake Hebert that we'll get to. No one's going to ask us about a Peter Bork run game package if he were to come to Notre Dame. But he's a good athlete that can move around, and he's dangerous with his legs. But he's doing that in a passer type of format like a CJ Carr. And so yeah, I'm fine with that. And I'm also fine if you want to go get more of a dual threat guy. I just want a really talented quarterback that can run this offense at a high level. That's the only need. My preference would be a little bit more for a dual threat guy because that's always my preference. But I try to like separate what I prefer and what's needed. And I think what's needed is a talented player that can run Mike Denbrock's offense at a high level. And that's the only thing that's really needed at this point, in my opinion. Great question. Great question, Brandon.
Yeah, it's a good way to get us kicked off here, Brandon. Brian, you and I see that the same. Is it a necessity? No. I think above all, in this age of college football, I do think that the more of the stiff pocket passers are kind of leaving the game a little bit. Because even Noah Grubbs is athletic enough to escape a pressure.
And he's gotten more. So
mm-hmm.
Everybody talks about, I finally watched the spring game he played in, that everybody's talking about how bad he was. And I went back and watched him. I was like, dude, that's the most athletic I've seen Noah Grubbs play. He had to be. His offensive line was getting destroyed.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, like he's a lot better in the pocket, to your point. So, yeah, you are correct. It's just that big, like when I was a kid, like the Dan McGuire, Neil Lomax type of Bernie Kosar type of just like he's dropping back and that's where he's going to be. There's not a lot of teams that use that kind of guy anymore, Trev.
Nope. So the way the game is evolving, it is a need that all quarterbacks coming in have to have some level of athleticism to them, but it's not a necessity that they have to be a true dual threat guy. It's not a necessity that every quarterback they bring in has to be Riley Leonard, has to be a Malik Zaire type player, so, but some level of athleticism, some sort of baseline there. Absolutely. Good question, Brandon. All righty. Getting us started here at the top, Salty puts together the thread on the board. So we give him the honor of getting the first buy-sell hold submission read. So buy-sell hold from Salty with an improved wide receiving core to also occupy defensive personnel, as well as a quarterback and an offensive coordinator with high capacities and intents to throw to all parts of the field. Jaden Greathouse will have a nationally elite performance throughout the season and postseason. Wide receiver recruiting will see the benefits as early as this season, with at least one of their top targets committing late or flipping to the Irish before early signing day.
I'm very curious how you're going to respond to this one, Trevor, but I'm actually going to sell this. And the reason I'm going to sell this is because I think we might, I don't know why that just popped up. The reason I'm going to sell that is because I think it's probably a difference of opinion in regard to what do you consider a nationally elite season. If we're talking impact, just big time player, clutch player, go-to guy, steps up in big games, I'd buy it. But normally when people talk about a nationally elite, they're talking about the production volume. They're talking about what Jeremiah Smith did last year with 70 catches and 1,300 yards and that kind of production. They're thinking of what the guys from Ohio State really have done year after year after year. You not only had what we saw last year from Jeremiah Smith, but the year before, Marvin Harrison's over 60 catches, 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns. The year before that, he's over 70 for 1,200 yards. You go back to Jackson Smith and Jigba with 1,600 yards a couple of years ago. You think about what Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas did at LSU 2 years ago, where Brian Thomas is the load guy on the numbers production, and he had 68 catches for 1,100 yards and 17 touchdowns. I just don't see Jaden putting up that kind of numbers. Maybe over 16 games. But again, I don't see him being that guy where he's just 70 catches, 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. Not that he's not, a very talented player, but it's just the nature of the offense. Like somebody the other day, it was funny. We were having this conversation and somebody was like, I see Jaden Greathouse in more like a TJ Jones type of player, not a true number one. And I'm like, hold on a second. TJ Jones in his last year at Notre Dame caught 70 passes for 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's pretty flipping good. And I think Jaden Greathouse is a better player than TJ Jones. But the reality is that 2013 offense was a team that threw the ball a decent amount. But I mean, you only had 3 guys that had over 210 yards receiving that year. It was a lot of production around 3 guys. You obviously had TJ Jones, DeVaris Daniels, and then Troy Nicholas. Your number 4 receiver was Chris Brown with 15 catches for 209 yards. Your next best receiver was Ben Quake with 10 catches for 171 yards, and then literally nobody else in the team had more than 10 catches. This is the whole thing we've kept talking about, Trevor, is like, I could see Notre Dame being a better passing team production-wise in that group, but it's just there's going to be so much more production spread around. You look at that 2013 season with TJ Jones, and your top pass-catching running back that year was George Atkinson, who had 7 catches for 51 yards. I could see a game where Jeremiah Love does that by himself, either yards-wise or catches-wise. And so I just think the production is going to be so spread out that the number production will not be like a Will Fuller type of year, a TJ Jones type of year. So that's kind of where I look at it. What I think he could be like a money player, where he's at, 60 catches for, I'm trying to think of, like, let me just do some math here real quick, because I always can get the catch part right, but I don't always what would be a good number to go with that. So let's say he's at 60 catches for 850 yards at the end of the year. So over 14 yards a catch. That's right in line with what he's done his first 2 years. That's a heck of a season when you consider I also expect that level of production from Malachi Fields. I expect the combination of Jordan Faison and Will Pauling to be at least 600 yards this year. You and I both think Eli Raridan's going to have a big year this year. You're going to have Jeremiah Love out of the backfield, Aeneas Williams potentially out of the backfield. I just don't think he's going to be able to put together like that Will Fuller type of season, because I don't see they're different players, number one, but the other part of it is I don't see that type of lack of disparity with the receivers. Like when Will Fuller had 1,200 yards in 2015, the next highest production from receivers 597. I think what you'd rather see is but I think what you might see is that same type of production from your 1-2. So let's just kind of go look at it. Let's just say you had 1,258 yards from Will Fuller, 597 from Chris Brown, and you break that up, that's 927 yards. Okay, I think you could see that same level of production from those two, from your number 1 and number 2, but it would just be more balanced, where it's not one guy dominating. But again, that's another year where your number 3 receiver didn't get to 400 yards. I just don't think we're going to see that from this team because of the weapons they have. So that's why I sell it, is because I'm looking at it from a number standpoint. I'm buying that he could have that type of impact. And I'm also going to buy that his production combined with Malachi Fields' production and some of the other will impact receiving. And I could see Notre Dame getting a top target to either flip or they get in on a big-time guy late in the year in this class. So I'll buy that part as well.
Yeah, I'll buy the second part of it, because I think that an on-the-field performance from multiple wide receivers in 2025 would bode well for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail. I'm going to sell the first part. I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be elite for what Notre Dame needs, but he's not going to be nationally recognized as an elite player because of, one, all the things that Brian listed off. But two, look, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, and I loved, obviously, what Jaden Greathouse did to end the season, and their 2 biggest games went off. At the end of the day, that's 2 games. I mean, he had a good game against Louisville. He had impact catches throughout the year, but we've talked about it on the show before. He ended 7 or 8 games last season with 1 or fewer catches. And so I need to see it at a more consistent level with him. The numbers are impressive. Like that 1 catch did go for a first down, or the 1 catch did go for 21 or 42 yards. But 1 catch for 42 yards is not a nationally elite performance. Right. And so one player that I kind of think about with Jaden Greathouse being elite for what Notre Dame needs is where he shows up in the big moments. We've talked about him before, but I think back to different position here, but big picture, what O.J. Howard did for Alabama in 15 and 16.
Mhm.
I mean, in the postseason, O.J. Howard in 2015 in the national championship game had 5 catches for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. A lot of hype coming in around him going into the 2016 season. And he started out 3 catches, 39 yards, 2 catches, 29 yards. I do believe that Jaden Greathouse will have more than that. But my point is in some of the bigger games of Alabama's 2016 season, O.J. Howard came to play home against Texas A&M, 8 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. Home in the Iron Bowl, 5 catches, 45 yards. And then again in a national championship loss, had 4 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown. And so I think that's a similar impact with some of the games in between being more production numbers for Jaden Greathouse. I just don't see him there. I think there is a small member of the fan base. I see it on social media. I see it sometimes on the boards. Just don't be discouraged if Jaden Greathouse's performance in the semifinals and in the national championship game is not his performance every single week for 14, 15, 16 games. That's not the expectation. I'm not saying it's not possible, but
that's not the expectation for Jeremiah Smith every week.
Yeah.
I mean, like, do you guys understand what kind of level of production that would be? Like that's my thing is like think about what that would be. So Jaden Greathouse had 13 catches for 233 yards, right? So if you did that just for the course of an entire regular season, that's 1,398 yards catching, and that's 78 catches for 1,398 yards and 18 touchdowns. That's not happening. That's the regular season. You know, I mean, like, that's just not going to happen. And anyone trying to convince themselves that it will is just doesn't follow football and is you're spending too much time playing NCAA 2025 on freshman mode and not watching real football games. You know, so there and Trev, there will be games where Jaden Greathouse has 2 catches for 10 yards, and that's okay. And that doesn't always mean that his production isn't good or his performance isn't good. I broke down a game where one of our best receivers, I've talked about this in the show before, one of our best receivers had 3 catches for 6 yards. He was incredibly impactful in the game. Well, how the heck did that happen? Brian D. Blackwell? No. But he was so good in previous games that the defense spent their entire defensive game plan was stopping him. So had 2 other receivers went for over 100 yards that game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I mean, that's just how it's going to go sometimes. I would say, you and I talked about this during the season, a lot of his production lulls had more to do with the quarterback and the offense than it did Jaden Greathouse.
Sure.
But even with that, it wasn't like, man, Greathouse would have gone for 70 for $120 or 7 for $120 if it wasn't for that bum Riley Leonard. It wasn't that either. You know what I mean? It's like
Sure.
He should have had 3 for 55 in this game if Riley would have had time to throw or looked at him more or whatever the case may be. And so, you know, like I think 60 catches for 800 yards is a pretty darn good regular season for Jaden Greathouse. Like if he does that, he had a heck of a year. So 60 catches for 850 yards, heck of a regular season for Jaden Greathouse.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, he'd be their best wide receiver since 2021 if he did 60 for 800 in the regular season.
Great for and you nailed this. It's going to be great for what Notre Dame needs from him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an elite national performance. But that kind of season, if Malachi Fields has one that's comparable, and you see some production from Jordan Faison and Will Pauling and those guys, that does have a major impact on high school recruits that are right now looking at Notre Dame as a running team. And that's how, like, that's the sales pitch that Texas has given Caden Finley right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look, man, they don't throw the football. They're going to run it all the time. That's fine. And I'm like, well, yeah, maybe, but Notre Dame also scored more points per game than Texas did last year, had more yards per play than Texas did last year. Matter of fact, Notre Dame scored more points than Texas each of the last 2 seasons and had more yards per play than Texas each of the last 2 seasons. I'm just saying, you know, they don't want to talk about that because they, you know, but that's what they should do. That's their job. Their job is to, you know, to say things in a way that gets people to come commit to their school, even if it's dishonest. I don't love it, but that's just the reality of it. But, you know, I mean, look, that's kind of where this is right now for Notre Dame. And if they want to change that, then they've got to go out and have more success. And I think that they will. We've talked about this. I think that they will. And it'll have an impact on recruiting.
Yeah.
Even this year's recruiting class, but it'll even more so in 27.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Buy, sell, hold from Joe Allen 72. The Big 12 and the ACC will dig in their heels to keep the seeding and the auto bids in its current setting, but the SEC and Big 10 will flex and create a new super conference.
I don't think those things all go together, Joe. I'm going to be honest with you. I think those two things are a little bit different. The SEC and Big 10 don't have to create a new super conference in order to veto the Big 12 and the ACC, because the Big 12 and the ACC gave up their veto authority in the 2026 and beyond playoff format. They did. And so there's not a whole lot they can do at this point in time unless they want to sue. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I'm going to sell this for a couple of reasons. Number one is I don't think that the Big 12 and the ACC will both dig in their heels. I think the Big 12 will, and I think Notre Dame will to a degree. But at the end of the day, if they're not willing to sue, then it won't matter, because at the end of the day, the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the SEC can ultimately do what they want within reason. And that doesn't mean that what they want to do will pass legal muster or whatever the case may be, but you've got to sue to prove that. And I don't know that the ACC has the stones or the leadership to fight that hard. Like, I don't think they have the stones to fight the SEC as hard as they fought their own members. I just don't. And I wonder where their war chest is for that type of thing right now, after all the money they had to spend. And this is where Florida State and Clemson kind of screwed their league over, because you forced your league to invest all this money in lawsuits to keep you from leaving, which the ACC should have done. Now maybe they don't have as much money to fight this next battle that's coming. Big 12 does, though. Notre Dame does. And I don't think at the end of the day, I don't think the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10 are going to create some new super conference. I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't. I think that's their threat, but I don't think that'll happen. I think what's ultimately going to happen when this is all said and done and the dust clears is eventually football is going to separate from the NCAA. And I think that's what the NCAA wants. I don't think the NCAA wants to deal with college football anymore. I don't. I think they just want to go back to running tournaments and dealing with Olympic sports, which are a different thing. So I think that ultimately is what's going to happen, is we're going to see that. We're going to see them kind of break off, and it won't be a super conference the way that you're thinking about it. I think it's basically just going to be the current Power Four plus some other teams. You probably bring Washington State and Oregon State over. You might bring in a couple group of fives, Boise, teams like that. But eventually, basically, Power Five football is essentially going to break apart. What it looks like within that's the big question. Do we get some sort of, congressional leadership that steps up and says, hey, we're going to push back against, there's a couple congressmen threatening that. I don't know if they'll actually do it or not, but basically saying that they're going to go after the NCAA. And I think there's a desire from some to say the NCAA needs to, or the Power Five football needs to look a lot like the NFL from the standpoint of taking the TV money and splitting it evenly amongst all the schools, which is something I've advocated for. And I think that's what should happen. And then all of a sudden we go back to the regional conferences again. And so now within that 70 plus team power conference model that's separate from the NCAA, you go back to the Pac-12 or even maybe Pac-10. And it started, what was it called? It was the Pac-8 before that. You go back to the Southwest Conference. The Big East becomes a thing again because basketball doesn't matter anymore. And if it's not about TV revenue for a conference, then things look a lot different. So that's kind of where I think the ultimate goal is, but I don't know if the SEC and the Big Ten will allow that, because then they'll push back and file their own suits and things along those lines. It's going to get really messy here moving forward unless the Big 12 and the ACC just push out and let them do whatever they want. And I hope that they don't do that, because the SEC and the Big Ten are absolutely not looking out for the best of the game. The fact that Greg Sankey responded the way that he did, he knows he's not doing that. But at the end of the day, I'm not even mad at Greg Sankey for that. I mean, I dislike him and I don't respect him, but that's his job. That's what he's hired to do. Get the most amount of money you can for our member conferences. That's what his job is. His job is not necessarily to do what's right for the game. And he knows that, because he knows if he does what's right for the game, and that means 10 to 50 million less dollars. Like, let's say Greg Sankey made this big move and he was this great leader and he led to this thing where the result was it was better for the Big 12 and better for the ACC and Notre Dame. but it meant the SEC schools were getting 10 to 15 million less dollars per year from TV revenue, you think he'd still have a job? Probably not. So, I mean, he's ultimately not the boss. He's doing what the bosses want him to do. And that's why I think, I mean, I dislike him. I don't respect him. I don't think he's honest. But at the end of the day, that's what they're paying him to do, is get the most he can for that league.
Fair enough. Buy, sell, hold from B. Jamin 41. When Notre Dame goes on an epic run, winning, let's say, 2 of the next 3 national championships, a major program will go independent and break away from their conference, football only, to reap the full financial benefits of being independent and to have more flexibility with scheduling. Basically saying if Notre Dame is able to do it, we can do it too.
I want you to read the next one because there was another like this, and I wanted to get them both at once.
Yeah. Buy, sell, hold from D. Masak 2. If Notre Dame continues to make regular appearances in the Final Four, therefore keeping all their financial winnings from those games as an independent rather than having to give it to a conference, we see one other former independent school return to independence within the next 10 years.
So I love both of these submissions, and I love where your guys' heads are at. But at the end of the day, I keep going back to this. None of those schools stopped being independent because they didn't think they could survive in football. Penn State didn't join the Big Ten because they didn't think they could be good at football anymore without it. Florida State didn't join the ACC because they didn't think they could be good at football anymore and couldn't compete for national championships as an independent. That's not why they went independent. They went independent. That's not why they went away from being independent. As I've said before, the last time Notre Dame won a national championship, there were, I believe, Trevor, 24 independent football teams. And the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and the number 5 teams in the country at the end of the year were all independent teams. Notre Dame, number 1, Miami, number 2, Florida State, number 3, and West Virginia, number 5. All independent teams, plus number 13, Syracuse. And then, of course, you also had Penn State that year. Nats back in the AP only ranked 20 teams. So there might have been some others back then too. But the reality, Trevor, is that's Miami didn't leave because being in the Big East made them a better football program. Penn State didn't join the Big Ten so they could have a better shot of winning championships because they had literally just won 2 championships in the 1980s, right before they left. They left for one reason and one reason only. They couldn't benefit financially from it. So Notre Dame winning national championships doesn't change the dynamic that Penn State can't survive on its own, no matter how much success they have. And I get what you're saying. It's like, well, look, Notre Dame did it. Yeah, that's always been the rub. That's always been the thing that made people mad, is that Notre Dame could survive on their own and they can't. No one's going to give Florida State a TV deal like Notre Dame has. Nobody's going to give Penn State a TV deal like Notre Dame has, especially now that they left being independent and become a regional conference. Excuse me, a regional football team. Like that's the reality of it. And so they sacrificed what made them who they were. Now, Ohio State and Michigan are national brands, but that's because they built themselves as national brands as part of the Big Ten. Penn State, they were always the big boys of the Big Ten. It's always been Michigan and Ohio State. Even in years where Michigan State was the best team or Northwestern went to the Rose Bowl, the big bad boys of the brand standpoint was always Ohio State and Michigan.
Yep.
Penn State was never going to compete with that. They just basically became a better version of Michigan State, a better version of Wisconsin, in that they're a regional program. And I pointed this out when we were comparing Notre Dame's roster to Penn State's, looking at it from a recruiting standpoint in J1 Cider, where they've got 0 players from Texas. I think they're like 1 guy from California. And it's just like they're an East Coast school because they have to be. They can't go recruit nationally the way that Notre Dame does and the way that Alabama does and Ohio State does. And that's the reason they joined us, because they couldn't do that in an era where money started being driven by the TV revenue. Changed the game. It was all about you couldn't survive without TV revenue. That's why they left. And if they could do that, but it's not about Notre Dame winning, because Notre Dame went through a long time of not being good at football, and they were still able to handle being independent.
Yeah, the way that I look at this, I'm at the front, I'm selling this. I get where you're coming from, B. Jamin and D. Masak, but here's the way that I look at this. Notre Dame has spent decades upon decades upon decades perfecting and evolving how to be an independent program and how to build their brand nationally. And they perfected, I don't want to say perfected, but they continue to, adapt and evolve to the different recruiting changes between the NIL landscape and how crazy the transfer portal is. And even in their ebbs and flows of being a championship contending program and let's try to make it to the Cheez-It Bowl contending program, they've remained independent, but they've spent decades doing it. There's a misconception. I think some people view big name teams that, they'll just go independent if they see Notre Dame doing it. To Brian's point, they literally wouldn't be able to. Like, it's not just something you can flip the switch. Like, hey, we're independent now. Notre Dame did it, so we're going to do it too.
That's what the whole point of the Longhorn Network was. Because one of the things that people got to remember when BYU left the Mountain West to go independent? It was Notre Dame and Texas that basically kind of coerced them to do that, because they were trying to create a little bit more of an independent wing of college football because Texas was trying to go independent. Now, they were trying to get into the Pac-12 and doing all that, but the end game was always about creating the Longhorn Network, so they would always have sort of this level of autonomy. And then eventually, maybe they go full independent. And it failed miserably. Because, again, you can have the big, bad state of Texas, but you have to have the national power to do it, and they just don't. I think there's a couple teams that might be able to do it, but the teams that might be able to do it are teams that have always been in the conference, which makes it harder for them to want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the old independents have the ability to do that in the current system. And that's the reality of it. Now, if my ultimate wish came true and I could separate, like, we should do a show on that, Trev. Maybe make a note of that, of basically what I would do to fix college football if I was the king of college football. Do a show on that. You guys let me know in the chat. Would you be interested in that? And it'd be serious proposals. It wouldn't be like I'm going to do this for Notre Dame and I'm going to make my, like a genuine, like, if you really wanted to fix the sport, here's what you would do. I'd love to do a show on that if you guys are interested in that. So let me know in the chat. But like, one of the things that I would do is with the TV, because I've seen people that are a lot smarter with knowledge of how the TV contracts work and all that have said college football actually hurts itself by its current system of each conference does their own thing. That if they actually pulled together, they could make more money. That's why the NFL makes more money than college football, because in the NFL it's all one entity. Where if college football said, hey, we're going to have, these 70 some brands or whatever are going to kind of have their own TV deal. Now, CBS could pay for, hey, we want to primarily have the SEC. We want to primarily have the Big Ten, like we see in the NFL, where Fox does, isn't it? Fox does the AFC, and then CBS does the NFC or something like that, which is weird because growing up, it was CBS had the NFC and NBC had the AFC. And then the NBC pays for the Sunday night game, right? And then ABC does the Monday game, and now Amazon's getting involved.
I was about to say, yeah.
Right. So all of that goes to all the teams evenly. So even though Fox hosts, you said Fox does the NFC?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? So even though Fox has the NFC, they're paying money that gets pulled to everybody. And so if you did something like that in college football, the argument is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it's a very compelling argument because it's how I feel about it, that you'd actually get more money that way than the way you're doing it now. But then you'd have to spread it. Some of the conferences would sort of lose some of their autonomy, and that's what they don't want to give up. And if that happened, let's just say that you take those teams away, you sign these deals and blah, 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 and now the money's being distributed evenly amongst the 70, however many teams of the new power, it'd be the power league. And then what you would see in that is you'd see Texas go back to the Southwest Conference. You'd see Arkansas go back to the Southwest Conference. You see Texas A&M go back to the Southwest Conference. You'd see Nebraska go back to the Big Eight. Now, some of the teams may stay in the SEC. Like A&M may stay because I just don't think they want to be with Texas. But like Missouri goes back to the Big 12. You know, you may see Penn State go back to being independent, or you may see Penn State and Miami break off and say, we're going to reignite the Big East. You know, Miami is a founding Big East member, or, you know, not a founding Big East member of like the Big East Football League. And then, you know, Penn State being a new member, but they were always kind of in line with those Big East teams. And so Pitt goes over there and BC goes over there. And then here's a crazy thought. Then the Big Ten goes back to being 10 teams because Penn State doesn't need to be in there anymore. That's the only way you're going to see that happen. And that's the only way you're going to see any potential of a Florida State, a Miami going back to being independent. And so, and Miami can make the decision, hey, we don't want to be part of the Big East. We want to just go all the way back to being independent again. Who knows? And I don't like Chip Kelly's idea of everyone's independent. I think that's kind of ridiculous. I think the conferences are great. It's part of what makes college football so phenomenal. But we've ruined that aspect of conferences with these new super conferences that we have now. So bring back the Southwest Conference, bring back the Pac-10, bring back the Big East, bring back the Big Ten having only 10 teams, bring back a much smaller version of the SEC. And maybe South Carolina and Arkansas or A&M decide they want to stay. They can choose to do that because it won't impact the SEC because it's still the same amount of money. And it doesn't impact all the other sports now because they're in a whole different entity, and that's not my concern anymore. This is just for football. So all those things kind of factor it into it, Trev, where I think that's the only way you'd see a team be able to go and be an independent. And because it's not about football. It's not about the success on the football field. It's about whether or not they can survive financially and have a network pay them the amount of money that because you got to remember, Notre Dame doesn't just get the money from being part of an independent from NBC. They also go over $20 million a year from the ACC. That factors into their money as well. They have special carve-outs for the college football playoff. Nobody else has the power to get those special carve-outs because, to your point, Trev, Notre Dame has been fostering this aspect of what it's been for decades. And that's why it's just not feasible. And it doesn't matter if Notre Dame wins 3 straight national championships. Because it would take somebody else winning 3 straight national championships to then have the power to say, we want to leave and get our own deal. It's about their success, not Notre Dame's.
That's such a good point. It's always the follow-up. I think of it like a diet plan. Like it's kind of like when some like super in shape person's like, yeah, you just live like I live and eat how I eat, and you're going to look just like me. It's like, okay, yeah, dude, like you've probably looked like this forever. But then if you start seeing like all the results, like it's like testimonials. I think that carries it a long way. Like if somebody else were to go independent, let's just say in this hypothetical situation, like a Penn State does decide to go independent, then it works for them. Then more teams might fall in line. But somebody's looking at Notre Dame was able to do it independently. It's like, yeah, and they won their other 11 national championships independently. Like that doesn't tell us anything new. So, yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point. Buy, sell, hold from B Jam in 41. Notre Dame has 5 true road games in 2025. Miami, Arkansas, Pitt, Boston College, and Stanford. Not all the games will be blowouts, but Notre Dame will win them all by double digits.
Sell. Guys, Notre Dame's going to play. Here's a crazy thought. Notre Dame's going to have some games this year that are more competitive than you think they should be. I know that we're in this point of the offseason where we think Notre Dame's going to beat everybody by 30. You know, like we got another submission. I'm not responded to it because we've answered it a million times, but there's another submission today about whether or not I think Notre Dame's going to beat Miami by double digits. And I'm like, I just don't get the obsession people have. You know, all I care about Notre Dame at Miami, have more points on the scoreboard than Miami has at the end of the day. That's all I care about. I think most of those games, I think at least 3 of those games will in fact be blowouts. I think one of them will be a blowout from start to finish. That'll be Stanford. I think 2 of BC, Pitt, and Arkansas will be not competitive games. Like 17-plus points games where You thought maybe in the first quarter and a half it'd be close, but they kind of pull away from it. Arkansas and Miami are different animals. They're certainly games Notre Dame could win and win convincingly. But Arkansas is a good home team. They are. Doesn't mean that they're going to beat Notre Dame, but they're a good home team. And as we talk about, Notre Dame kind of exercised some demons in Hard Rock Stadium, but they didn't do that against Miami. They did it against Penn State. Now they got to do that against Miami. And I think Miami's still a good football team. And even if I'm right about Miami, Trev, and you're wrong, no, that's going on the road against a team that's in the top 20 is not easy. But even if you're right, and Miami's a fringe top 30 to 35 team, which is, I think, about where you'd say they are in your ranking, correct? Like they're right outside the top 25. It's still not easy to go to their place in the first game with a brand new starting quarterback and a brand new defensive coordinator and just, wipe them off the map, just blow them out.
Oh, yeah.
I just care at the end of the day that Notre Dame comes back home from South Florida with a win. I don't care how many points it's by, just win. So I'm going to sell this.
Yeah,
I think they'll win all. I think they'll win all 5, but I don't think they'll all be blowouts or double digits.
I'm with you. I think all of us in this chat, everybody affiliated with Irish Breakdown, we can all agree that whenever Notre Dame comes to town, they get that team's best. I think that's fair to say. With all the attention that it draws, all the national attention, and like we've said before, beating Notre Dame is a big old gold star on your resume. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what Notre Dame's final record ends up being. You beat Notre Dame, that win will get talked about and be highlighted at your end of the season review, call it. And all these teams, especially Miami and Arkansas, will be that way. I'm not high on Miami, to Brian's point. I also don't think that they're going to go 4-8 and lose every game by 35. Like, they're going to be a good football team. I just don't see them as a top 10 team. And so when I look at these road games, yes, I will confidently say Notre Dame will beat Stanford by double digits, solely based on the makeup of their roster versus the makeup of Notre Dame's roster. I'm confident in saying that. The 4 other ones, I can't sit here on May 28th and confidently say it's all going to be double digits. And yes, I know double digits could be a 10-point game. Notre Dame beat Texas A&M by double digits and Georgia by double digits.
And that was a competitive game.
Yeah.
The Texas A&M game was a competitive football game. Notre Dame won by double digits.
Yes, absolutely. But I can't confidently say that yet.
I do like that he separates the difference between a blowout and a double-digit win. Because a double-digit win doesn't mean blowout. And I like that B. Jammin makes the difference there.
Absolutely.
Because like you mentioned, like Notre Dame beat Texas A&M by 10, Ohio State beat Notre Dame by 11. Those are 2 very different football games. Mm-hmm. Final score is only 1 point difference, but those were very different football games. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just think there's just going to be a couple, and I hope that that's true. I don't want Notre Dame to go into the postseason 12-0, having not played a competitive game all year, or really only 1 or 2 games that were even remotely competitive. I think you need to have some of those games where you got to face some adversity and come from behind and those type of things. I think like if you look like 2012 Pitt and 2018 Pitt, those were both growing moments for Notre Dame in those seasons that I think they needed to kind of say, look, we played like poo and we had to go win a sloppy game, but you know what? We learned a lot from it. It made us better. And then you go into play Oklahoma later in the year. So like if you think about the struggles against Purdue and struggle against Michigan early in the year, those games I think made that team a little bit self-assured that they had to go through those moments. So when later in the year, when the Stanford game comes about, and then later after that, the Oklahoma game comes about, you've been in those moments where you've had to respond to adversity and you're better prepared for it. And I think those are good for you. Like, you remember when Florida State 2013 played Auburn in the national title game?
Yeah.
And that year, I don't think Florida State had played a competitive football game like all year. I don't think they had played in a close game all year. Like that year, Clemson was pretty good, and they beat Clemson like 51-14 or something ridiculous like that. It was crazy. So then they go and play Auburn, and Auburn's a pretty good football team. Well, Florida State hadn't played a team like Auburn all year. And Auburn wasn't even that good. They were just better than anybody Notre Dame that Florida State had played that year. And Auburn jumps all over them. It's like 21-3 with like 5 minutes to go in the second quarter. And then Florida State scored late in the second quarter and then ended up coming back because they were just way better than Auburn. Like, they were just way better than Auburn. But they fell behind early. If Auburn was better, that game could have looked a lot like the Ohio State Notre Dame game, where they fell behind early. And, yeah, you claw back, but it's just not enough to win. They were just so much more talented than Auburn was that year that they were able to come back and win that football game, man. But that was a battle. They had to come back. I mean, you look at the regular season, the closest game they played all year in the regular season was a 14-point win at Boston College that year, Trev, in a game where Boston College scored last. You know, I mean, it was a 21-point game until Boston College scored in the fourth quarter. I mean, they beat Maryland, who was ranked at the time 63-0. They beat number 3 Clemson 51-14, number 7 Miami 41-14. Played number 20 Duke in the ACC title game, beat them 45-7. You know, played Florida that year, beat them 37-7. Like, they played no competitive games, and I think that hurt them in the title game against Auburn. And in the playoff format, you can't assume you're going to play a team that you just have so much better talent than that you can come from behind 21-3 and win a ball game. Notre Dame's not doing that to Penn State this year. If Notre Dame fell behind 21-3 instead of 10-3 at halftime, they don't come back and win that game. It'll look like the Ohio State game. You come back and you make it closer, but you don't have enough time or whatever to come all the way back against a team that good.
I mean, even really good teams have at least one game where it's just like, ooh, jumped up on you a little bit. Maybe you're not feeling it that day. I think there's a tendency when teams can go 11-1 or 12-0 that they just assume every win is a blowout. I mean, example, look at Oregon last year, 16-13 on the road against a not good Wisconsin team. Had to grind down deep to get that win. They still won, but it was 16-13. You go back and you look at, and I talk about 2019 LSU all the time on this show. Even them, with how dominant they were all year, they beat Auburn at home 23-20. Top 10 game. But everybody's recollection of that 2019 LSU team is what they did to Oklahoma in the semis and what they did to Clemson in the national championship game. Some of that was fueled by the adversity that they learned from the Auburn 2019 game where they beat them by 3 points at home. Clemson in 2018, they had a 2-point win on the road against Texas A&M. You know, they had a 4-point win at home over Syracuse. But people will remember the 77-16 Louisville, just absolute domination. They beat South Carolina 56-35. They beat Pitt in the ACC championship game 42-10. But all teams have at least one game where it's like, ooh, kind of snuck up on us there a little bit.
It's rare that happens, that there's just no close games.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought up Florida State in 2013, because that's the one example that I remember. Like, even 2001 Miami had that. I think it was Boston College. And I'm going to pull it up now, but it ended up being I believe like a 18-7 game, but it was closer than that. And then they also played on December 1st at the end of the year. They went on the road and played Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech, beating them by 2. It's like even that 01 Miami team that was one of the greatest teams we've ever seen had 2 games that were competitive. I'm actually going to try to see if I can pull up the box score of that Miami Boston College game. But remember, Miami had that crazy like fumble return for a score that Ed Reed took back, and it was just like it was a really weird game. But BC gave Miami everything they can handle in that game, and then so did Virginia Tech. That was one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. 19 LSU had a really ugly 23-20 win over Auburn, and then they had the big lead on Alabama. Bama comes roaring back, and they end up winning. But it got a little hairy. It was kind of like the Notre Dame Ohio State game. Got a little hairy there for a minute. Everybody has those days, with few exceptions. And the 2013 Florida State team was that exception in the regular season. But then they ended up having that type of game in the championship game.
I will say this to be Jam in submission. I do think that game is going to come at home. I don't think it's going to be on the road.
That's a good point.
Recent history, what we've seen from Notre Dame, what we've seen from other teams, like some of the teams that we just mentioned, that 2019 LSU Auburn game, that was in Death Valley. That 2018 Syracuse game, that was also in Death Valley. Mm-hmm. You know, and the teams that have kind of jumped on Notre Dame in recent history and Marcus Freeman's tenure, it's been at home. That Pitt 2012 game was at home. You know, Marshall, Northern Illinois, Stanford, those were all at home. Like on the road, Notre Dame has been pretty steady, not letting teams kind of get the jump on them. Like,
Yeah.
so
2023 against Louisville was a bit of an exception.
yeah.
I think back to 19 against Michigan in the rain.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule, but to your point, Trev, especially under Marcus Freeman the last couple of years, when this team is away from home, they tend to play their best football.
Yep.
I mean, just Georgia Tech last year. I mean, came out sloppy and then just worked Georgia Tech. And just from jump, they were just all over Miami and Army, just from jump. A&M, I think, I'll be honest with you, I think this year's A&M game could end up being maybe a little bit tougher than last year's A&M game.
Agreed.
Now, part of that is I don't think Notre Dame played very well against A&M last year. What I'm saying is I think both teams could play better, and the game will be very bit as competitive as it was last year. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But they're going to have a couple games like that. And if they don't, and they just blow everybody out, then we're going to have some interesting things to talk about come the postseason. No doubt about that.
Viso hold from older than dirt. There will be no Kenny Minchie package in 2025. He will be used more than Steve Angeli because he is just that good in the regular season Notre Dame offense. Also because that was promised to him.
I don't know that he was promised anything like that to come back. I don't know that. I've heard people mention it, so I've said it as a caveat, but I don't know that he was actually promised anything. So I can't really speak to that. I'll buy the first part. I've said this before. I don't think there's going to be a Kenny Minchie package in 2025 if he doesn't win the job. I don't know that he brings anything to the table. I also buy the fact that he'll be used more than Steve Angeli was last year because he is that good. But I still think it's going to be in sort of middle of the season when they start blowing people out. You get him a little bit earlier than you did last year. And I'll keep that comment to myself. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that. I think he'll be used more, but I don't think it's going to be a whole lot more. And I think it's just going to be because they blow some teams out and they want to make sure Kenny gets some work and gets some. Like I think part of it too is you want to do right by your player. And once you get to the point where you feel like CJ's kind of got everything rolling, because we're assuming that CJ's the starter. For this submission assumes that CJ's the starter, because if Kenny's the starter, then there's the Kenny Minchie package is called your base offense. But if we're assuming here that CJ is the starting quarterback for the purposes of this Biso hold, I don't know what Kenny brings to the table that's so unique that you have to put him in there. But I do think you want to do right by him, that you have to understand there's a chance he's going to leave after the year. He did it right. He came back, he battled and all that kind of stuff. He's a good teammate. He's very well liked by his teammates. He's a great kid, smart kid and all that. Hey, CJ's got a firm grasp on things. Let's put Kenny in the second half and, early in the second half and let him go to work so he can put some good film together. First of all, be ready if his number's called. But then two, if his number's never called, then we got to make sure he's got some good film together. They can show some people this offseason if he chooses it to portal. I'd have no problem if Notre Dame did that, as long as number one that you're making sure that CJ Carr is being developed the way that it. But like CJ Carr going in the third quarter of a 31-0 game at home against Purdue does not help better CJ Carr prepare for going out and beating Arkansas the next week on the road. Just doesn't. But it could be good for Kenny to get some work running and you'd put him in the third quarter with the first team offense. So, yeah. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely selling the second part. The first part is what's going to be interesting just as a whole, not even just per the submission, but whoever wins. I think the Notre Dame coaching staff is going to be tasked with a very interesting, okay, where do we kind of draw the line between getting our guy, our QB1 ready for most likely postseason run, and where do we kind of balance giving our backup some reps in the case that our starter gets hurt? I think some of the reason why we saw Steve quite a bit last season, one is because, they had that big leads against Stanford. They had a big lead against Purdue. They had big leads against, both service academies. But some of that too, especially earlier in the season, Riley was hurt. I I don't think he would have played in the third quarter against Purdue because it was 42-0. And to Brian's point, like that kind of crosses a threshold of like literally even if he was fully healthy, why even put him in? But maybe they would have put him in for a drive in the third quarter, let him throw a little bit if he wasn't banged up or hurt, potentially. It's definitely a what if. I have no concrete evidence of that. Will he
Trev,
be used?
that game was 42-0 at halftime. Like that's a rare, like that's like Oklahoma LSU 2019. Like that is just a beatdown of epic proportions. So it's hard to know. Like if they'd have done that at 28-3, I think we could be like, dude, they didn't play him because he was injured. But who the heck knows what they would have done if they were up 42-0? That's the point. But I think I think you're right, Trevor. If it was 28-3, you probably still don't see Riley Leonard in the second half, where normally you would at least a drive or two to truly put the game away.
Yeah,
I think they still would have put Steve in that instance.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's going to be an ongoing battle that I'm interested to see how they manage that. And it kind of goes back to I wish they would have let Kenny play more in 2024. Because at some point I got to the point in the season where it's like, okay, we know what Steve is. We know what commodity Steve Angeli brings to this team. I'm cool keeping him warm. I'm cool getting him in for like a quarter. But, I mean, Kenny Minchie came in, second to last or third to last offensive possessions for Notre Dame in the Purdue game. And then CJ got the last one where they took the knee. And it's like I just didn't need to see that much from him, I guess. Right. And so maybe obviously the coaching staffs had different things that they wanted to see than I. But, yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how they balance that out. But I'm definitely selling the second part because I have no idea what kind of things were talked about with Kenny Minchie, why he returned.
He kind of builds on this in the next couple.
Buy, sell, hold. There will be a Blake Hebert package for several reasons. One, to get him real game experience in 4 games in case or because Kenny will transfer for 2026 and beyond, just like Steve. The other reason is that at 6'3" and 223, he is close to Tim Tebow at 6'3", 236 combined size, and did rush for 588 yards as a high school senior.
So, number one, you can't make decisions like it's one thing for me to say, okay, Kenny needs to get this work in case he transfers. You're trying to look out for the kid. That's at the bottom of the reasons why you do what you do with Kenny Minchie. The reason you do with Kenny Minchie, number one, as I said, was you get it because you may need him. And if I know Steve, if I know Kenny Minchie at all, I'd be really shocked if he left the team during the playoffs the way Pope Prabula did. Really surprised. But at the end of the day, if he does that, he does that. And that's when you get Blake Hebert ready. I don't think that they're going to have a Blake Hebert package. Number one, you're not going to practice that for 4 games. Like, you're not going to practice that with your first team offense just to use it for 4 games. That doesn't make sense. And they definitely want to redshirt Blake Hebert this year. And he may be built somewhat like Tim Tebow, but he's not Tim Tebow. And I don't even mean that as like Tim Tebow's all the time. I just mean Tim Tebow was a runner first and a passer second coming out of high school. Blake Hebert's not that. So I just think the way you get him ready is just getting him working practice. I think sometimes people put way too much into mop-up minutes and what mop-up minutes are and what they do and how valuable they are. I mean, they're nice. They're good, but they don't like all of a sudden like this guy got mop-up minutes in 4 games, and so now all of a sudden he's more ready to play than a guy that never played. Well, I just don't think that really does a whole lot for you. It's not useless, but it's not the difference. Well, I was going to predict him to go 11-1, but now I'm predicting him to go 9-3 because this guy didn't get any mop-up minutes last year. That's what I mean by that.
I think it's really interesting how many people get fixated on having a quarterback package. Like there has to be a specific package for Kenny Minchie and one for Blake Hebert, and there's going to be probably one for Anthony Rizak, and there might be one for Tyler
I've
Buckner.
seen people mention that for Rizak.
I have too.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, the same reasons why I'm selling a Blake Hebert package is the same reason why I'm selling a Kenny Minchie package. Yes, I understand he's 6'3", 223. Do you know who weighs more than 223? He wears number 21 in In the running back room, he's
And
235.
he's about 4 inches shorter and faster.
Yeah.
He has better feet, and he's a running back. Exactly.
Like there doesn't have to be a specific package for every single situation Notre Dame's offense is going to face. They're not going to have a third down quarterback package and then a red zone quarterback package and then an every down quarterback package and then a trick play quarterback package. It's just they're going to have their guy.
I get why people I actually think the fact that people keep bringing this stuff up is a testament to the talent in the room.
Sure.
Because why do they bring it up? Because they want to keep Kenny happy. They don't want him to leave. They want to keep Blake Hebert happy, and they don't want him to leave. I think but like, guys, the reality is if Kenny Minchie wants to be a starting quarterback, having a package is not going to keep him happy and keep him here. He's going to want to be the starting quarterback. Or he's going to say, hey, you know what? All that's great, but I want to get my degree first. I have no idea. But I think a lot of it is because they just want to, in this era of the open transfer portal, they want guys to be happy, stay, and they think that a package, an appeasement package, is going to get them to stay. And I just don't know how that works. I mean, if there's a Kenny Minchie package this year, it's because they promised him one.
Yeah.
There's no other reason to do it, in my opinion.
Look, I
think the reason Kenny Minchie stayed this year is because he wants to compete for the starting quarterback job.
Absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, I'm not on Notre Dame's coaching staff. If that's what they think will get them to a national championship, then I will be all for it. You will hear me singing from the rooftops. If a Kenny Minchie or Blake Hebert package is successful in the season and crucial for them to get to a win, I'll love it. But right now, I don't see the need for it. But I do understand, excuse me, like the desire for people wanting it. I get that. But sometimes like I'm not looking ahead to 2026 and beyond because I'm still waiting for 2025 to get here. And that's kind of first on my watch list before I worry about somebody that could be the starter in 2027. That's how I evaluate it. But I get it. I don't want to see anybody leave Notre Dame. Buy, sell, hold. Also, then if Kenny decides he wants to leave before the postseason ends to get a jump on 2026 at his new school, Blake will have his package in case of an emergency.
Again, that kind of goes with the last one, and I saw that.
Buy, sell, hold from Domer Grizz. For men's basketball, making the NCAA tournament is a reasonable expectation for this year's team. Might come to a surprise to some, but I'm going to buy this. There's been some conversations on the board about how long it truly takes to turn around a basketball program, to which I say Louisville was able to do it in a year. They were the worst team in the ACC in the 2023 season. They made the tournament this past year. Different ways. Look, I'm not in love with the coaching job that Micah Shrewsbury did last year, but I will say this. His roster was very physically limited. And you could tell by watching games that it's just, so like when we watched Notre Dame play Stanford in 2024 last season, it's like they just can't keep up. Like the Stanford players are just not as big, as fast as what Jeremiah Love is, as what Bryce Young is, as what Jaden Greathouse is. And Notre Dame's men's team this past season found themselves in a lot of those situations. But this upcoming season, Marcus Burton elects to come back. That's huge. He's going to be probably a preseason first-team ACC all-type of player. He led the conference in scoring last year, took that thrown away from Cooper Flagg, from Duke. They returned a bunch of different guys. And like I just posted on the message board, they just brought in their highest-rated recruiting class of the modern era. And in basketball, young talent gets on the court significantly faster than what it does in football. So I think it's very reasonable. Shrews is going into year 3. He has experience at the point guard position. He has very athletic players. There's more size across the board on this team. I do think it's an expectation. Do I think they're going to be a 3 seed? No. But I think it's a reasonable expectation to say that they make the tournament for sure. For sure.
I agree.
Another buy, sell, hold from Domer Grizz. For women's basketball, making the Elite 8 is a reasonable expectation. For example, a step forward from where they wound up last year, but a step back from what we expected a year ago.
I mean, look, the expectation because I'm going to say it a little differently. I'm going to say it from the standpoint of it's the Notre Dame women's basketball team making a run to the Elite 8 should always be the expectation, minimum expectation.
Yeah.
Especially this deep into Coach Ivey's tenure. I look at this roster, though, and I don't see an Elite 8 team. I don't care how good Hannah Hidalgo is. She's 5'6". She can't take a game over the way that a much taller Juju Watkins can, or a much taller Paige Beckers could, or things along those lines. Like, I just look at this team and this is just not going to be very good. I don't know how good this team is going to be. They lost out on multiple top portal targets that they were hoping to get. I just don't know if this team is going to be that good next year. NCAA tournament team, yes. But I don't know how good this team is going to be. And if they couldn't make an Elite Eight run this year with this roster, I don't see how they make one next year. Unless it's one of those deals where she just doesn't know how to coach a really talented team, and this is her kind of blue collar team. Maybe. But I look at this team and I'm just like, they're a tournament team, I think, but they're not. They got to be a lot better than I think they're going to be to make that kind of run. Like, I don't know what their post is going to look like. Like, that's going to be really concerning. But and I think part of the reason I think they're still a tournament team is obviously got Hannah Hidalgo, but I think Cass Prosper is going to be a breakout player for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I mean, if she was a 5-star recruit, she's just been had to be a niche player because she's been buried behind Sonia and Maddie and some older players. But I think Cass Prosper is really good. Mm-hmm. And I think her breaking out is kind of that bigger wing, can play some of the post to complement. Hannah Hidalgo will be nice. A couple of the portal guards they got are good players, but the bigs they got in the portal this year are just not inspiring. Just they don't. I mean, actually, I think their backcourt should be really good, but because like the guards they got in the portal are complementary to Hannah, not like the problem that Hannah and Olivia had is they're both ball dominant, and they didn't really mesh together personality-wise. I actually think when they were playing together, I thought it was a thing of beauty. But I think some egos kind of got in the way there with both of them. The guards they brought in now are not big-time players. They're there to help with ball, protecting the ball. They can run some stuff with Hannah off the ball. Hannah can run the point and all that. I think that's actually good, and I think you've got a chance to have a pretty good backcourt. But I don't have a lot of confidence they're going to have the post to really be competitive. They're going to run into an Oregon State type team. Remember 2 years ago, and they had those bigs, and they just beat Notre Dame up in the post because they had no post presence at all. So I think it's going to be a very disappointing. And it's just on top of just what was you climb up to number one, and they were just never the same team after that. Mm-mm. And they just couldn't push the right buttons to fix it. They just could never get back on track. I just thought tournament comes, they're going to get back on track and they're going to be fine. And they never could. They just could never get it all going. It was very disappointing.
Yep, agreed. Bisel Hold from MT Irish. Watching Jeremiah Love's touchdown in the Penn State game for the 100th time got me thinking of the best plays of the last 20-ish years. So some of my favorite plays based on the play itself and impact to the game, season, and perception of Notre Dame. One, Jeremiah Love's touchdown run against Penn State. Are we? Yeah,
I think we're just kind of buy-selling hold these being the best plays, impact on the game, season, and perception. Yeah, buy that.
Miles Boykin Citrus Bowl touchdown against LSU.
I'll buy that. That was huge. I mean, that's one of those ones they're going to be looking back 30 years from now and be like, you remember that play Miles Boykin had against LSU? The funny thing is that wasn't even really his toughest catch of the game. He had a catch earlier in the game going the same direction on the other sideline where he caught a cover two throw, and the safety came over and drilled him, and he held on to the ball. Yep. That was actually it wasn't as acrobatic, but it was tougher because he got lit up on that play. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Will Fuller's clincher touchdown against Virginia.
That's a big one. I still feel like, I mean, he had a couple that year. The touchdown against Temple to win it. I still think the biggest play of the season for Will Fuller that year, I still contend, was the 75-yard touchdown against USC on the first play of the first offensive play of the game. Because they'd gotten slaughtered by USC the year before. Just one of the worst losses ever to USC. And USC comes out that first drive, and Cody Kessler's just picking them apart, takes them right down the field, score a touchdown. And you're just like, here we go again. And for Will Fuller to answer with like a one-play 75-yard touchdown where he just torches Adoree Jackson was like, okay, this ain't 2014 anymore. I actually think that play had a bigger impact on their season because I think that was kind of that final, hey, we're really good type of play.
Yeah.
But does it even get to that point in time if he doesn't have that play against Virginia? It's a very fair point. It's a very fair point.
And then for a bonus, the Samardzija fourth quarter touchdown against Michigan State in 2006.
That's the slant he caught, stopped, and then went back
Yep.
outside, right?
Yep.
I'd have to go back and watch the sequence of plays from that game because I thought Rama's touchdown on the sideline he caught over his shoulder was a pretty big one as well.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those ones is like, does the Samardzija one matter as much if Rama doesn't make the one that he made? I'm actually going to go pull up the YouTube highlights of that game, but I kind of feel like, you know, I mean, you could probably go with I'm fine with the Samardzija one. I just never felt like that was the biggest play in the game. You know, I kind of felt like the Rama one and really the real big play of that game, if you remember, Trev, I think it was John Carlson. Remember the one that got tipped?
The tipped. And
then John Carlson caught it and then made that big play. And it was but Carlson had really the play that really got Notre Dame going in that game was Carlson's long touchdown run or touchdown catch because they were down 31-14. And Brady, if you remember, Brady hit Carlson right up the seam. I think it was hold on, let me find it.
It was early in the third quarter.
Yeah, it was like actually it was like looked like it might even been a slant, maybe a backside seam, and then Carlson outruns a defense and scores. And so, like I thought that was maybe an even bigger play, but Rama had some big time plays in that game too, man. And Samardzija's touchdown made it 24-14, and then Michigan State went down and scored again. So I don't know that Samardzija's was as game changing as the one that no, actually
that was the
37-21. The highlight thing was off. The highlight thing showed 24-7. It was 37-21, so it was a big time play, and that was a huge play.
Yeah,
slant catches it, breaks it back outside. It was 4th and 5. Yeah, the original highlight that I saw was wrong.
Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns that game.
Okay, so then it was the first one that was 24-7. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he caught one screen pass that he took, and that was a pretty easy. Like he basically went in untouched.
That's the first one. Okay, so that was the 24-7 one. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the guy that had the biggest play of that game wasn't Terrell Lambert. It wasn't Samardzija. It wasn't Brady Quinn. It wasn't John Carlson. It wasn't Rama. It was Chinny. That strip.
Yeah.
I still feel like that's the play that kind of, I think, changed everything. So that was a wild game, man. An absolutely wild game. Because it was 37-27. And he made that strip. Mm-hmm. And then that's when Brady threw that crazy pass. You're just like, dude, what are you doing? And then you're like, oh, touchdown. You know what I'm talking about? The one that was just like, it looked like it was in double coverage, and then he just drops over outside Rama. That made it 37-33. That's what really broke that thing open.
Yeah.
Or not broke it open, but like really like, okay, they're back in this thing. Mm-hmm. And then obviously Terrell had that pick 6 on the next drive. It was the next drive.
Yeah, well, I mean, that strip put him in that put John L. Smith in a position where he elected to try to throw.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
And Terrell picked it off.
That was really, really dumb.
And that wasn't even his most impressive interception because that ball was tipped. The most impressive one was like the game-ending one.
Oh, the one that like off the back of a guy? Yeah, that was wild. That was wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's been a lot of good plays. I mean,
oh yeah.
Samardzija 06 UCLA touchdown.
Yeah, that was an even bigger one in 06. One of mine, I mean, as a kid, I mean, obviously you've got, who was it? Was it Omar Jenkins that had a big catch against Michigan State? Or it was Arnaz Battle. You had the Reggie Brooks touchdown run against Michigan where he got knocked out, still scored. Yeah, there's been some big ones.
Biso hold from Balpine Shillelagh. From what you've seen at practice, Gino Guidugli has the chops to to get enough out of CJ and Kenny to win a championship. All other position groups assumed to have the same talent as 2024.
I can't really speak to that. I'm going to have to hold this one because I can't really speak to that from practice because I just haven't seen Gino do a lot of practice because we've gotten so little access to that. And the stuff they do at quarterback, it's not really like the big work that Gino, like I'll say this, everything that Gino does drill-wise, I have no problem with. It's all fine. My issue with Mike Sanford was more they were doing drills where I'm like, dude, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen a quarterback do in a practice. Like if my quarterback coach would ask me this, like, I'd have been like, hold on a second, dude. What are you having me do this for? But I don't see any of those issues. Ultimately, in my opinion, it's not the drills and things that we can see that determine whether a guy's a good quarterback coach or not. It's where can he get their minds right? Can he get them to understand how to process the reads and get the ball where it needs to go and those type of things? And how does he coach them up after they make mistakes and things like that? Those are things that we just don't get to see very often. That's going to ultimately determine the success there. And then, of course, the other problem is it's hard to evaluate the job Gino Guidugli's done because the last 2 years he got veterans that had been developed by other schools, and there's only so much you can do with a veteran player that has been coached up like that, and where these guys have all only been coached in college by Gino. And so this will be the true test of the job that Gino Guidugli's doing. And I'm actually excited to see, what they're going to get out of those guys, because this is going to tell us, like, okay, what kind of coach is he?
Yeah.
To get these two really talented younger players ready to go mentally. Look, CJ Carr came to Notre Dame a pretty finished product from a technical standpoint. It's just don't screw it up. The part is going to be about how does he help CJ master the offense? That's where the coaching is going to be needed. How does he help CJ handle the pressure of being Lloyd Carr's grandson as the starting quarterback at Notre Dame type of thing, or if Kenny's in that role? How does he help him handle that pressure? That's going to be the true gauge of how good of a job Gino Guidugli does this year.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm with you. By so whole, Dabo Swinney has the chops to bring Clemson back to a national championship within the next 2 years.
He's got the chops to do it, but just because you got the chops to do it doesn't mean you will do it. But yeah, they're recruiting at a very high level right now.
Mm-hmm.
What was one of the biggest issues when Clemson was going through those struggles? 2 issues. Number one, he had a defensive coordinator that just wasn't very good. And we talked about it on the show a lot of times. And number two, there was really 3 problems. Number 2, their offensive line wasn't coached as well, and they weren't as tough as they had been. And then number 3 was they didn't have playmakers on offense, especially receiver, at all. Well, what has Dabo been doing the last couple of years? He's made some big hires. You obviously got Matt Luke 2 years ago. I think that's going to continue to pay dividends. I think that getting Tom Allen this offseason was one of the biggest moves. I think that and then Ryan Grubbs going to Washington might be the 2 biggest coaching moves this offseason from an assistant standpoint. It's in the conversation, certainly. And then 3, they not only have the talented receivers they have now, but in the 26 class, they've got Naeem Burrows, they got Connor Solomon, they got the kid from North Carolina that Notre Dame was trying to flip, Gordon Sellers down the stretch, who's a very talented player. And all of a sudden, Clemson's starting to recruit the receiver position like they used to. Now, I don't know if any of those guys are quite as good as like Justin Ross was, but they're all very good football players. And so I think he's the biggest thing about winning in chops is, can you identify why you're not winning and then fix it?
Yeah.
And some coaches can do one and not the other. Some coaches can do neither. The great ones can do both. And that's what I think Coach Swinney has shown he can do.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Buy so hold from Black Irish 864. Brian will host an Irish Breakdown tailgate in Clemson, South Carolina.
One of these days. Yeah. One of these. Now that they got 12 years of signing. So yeah, we'll at least one. Yeah, buy that. We'll do it one of these years.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm buying it because I'll be there. So let's go. That'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Buy so hold. The first 2 first-year starting quarterbacks will be invited to New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I'm
going to sell that. I think 1 potentially, but not 2. You could have. There's actually some another interesting buy so hold about second-year or first-year starting quarterbacks, but no, because I think with Arch. I guess Arch counts as a first-year starter, but, there's Sam Levitt. There's some – I don't know there'll be two. Definitely one. So I'm going to sell that, but I don't sell it with great conviction.
Yeah, I'm along the same lines as you are. Yeah, I'm going to sell it. I think it will be close, though. I do, especially because, I think since quarterbacks weren't in the top two finalists and the winner last season, I think there's going to be an extra push for I think quarterback play is going to be weighed relatively heavily this year. So there's some exciting young first-time starters. Whoever starts at Notre Dame, I don't know if you would consider Dante Moore a first-year starter because he started at UCLA.
I would, because he's a first-year starter at Oregon, but
Okay.
I don't know that it would fit into the same category of what I think.
Okay.
Chris is asking about here.
Okay, I got you.
So I'm with you on that. I count him as a first-year starter, but I don't think most others would, because it is at a new school with new players. But and he was never the full-time starter at he didn't start the season at UCLA and then start every game the whole season. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I think you'd probably count him as not a first-year starter. Now that I talk through it, I don't. He's not a first-year starter there, because then if you're going to use that logic, you can say, well, Riley Leonard was a first-year starting quarterback, and that's silly.
Fair.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold. Marcus Freeman would have won the national championship with the 1988 Notre Dame football team.
I'd sell that. We don't know that Marcus Freeman can win a championship, period. He showed he can get him to the title game, but he hasn't shown he can win it yet. I think he can, but he hasn't shown it yet. I think Lou Holtz was a special coach, and it was the right coach at that time. I think a lot of times, Trevor, success is about just greatness, but it's also about you went to a place at the right time. And I think Lou Holtz was the right guy for Notre Dame at that time. Just like Eric Parsegian was the right guy for Notre Dame at that time. And Marcus Freeman is the right guy at Notre Dame for this time. And so, no, I sell that. And that's no disrespect to Marcus Freeman. It's just that was a team that needed a coach like Lou Holtz to be successful, in my opinion.
I'm selling it too. Also for the same reasons around why we talk about different players being able to play in different eras. It was just a different time of coaching football. I guess if we go with Marcus Freeman was brought up coaching in that era, maybe same if Lou was brought up coaching in this era, could he be successful from an intangible standpoint? Sure, but you never know. I'm with you. I don't.
Let's think. Even if you were to say take Marcus Freeman now and put him back then, and he grew up in that, it's still though he was still a young coach.
Yeah.
That was stepping in for a program that was in disarray.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Marcus Freeman as a guy that had never been a head coach would have thrived even in that era. Lou Holtz had turned programs around before. He had been at NC State. He'd been at Arkansas. He had been at Wayman. He had been places, Minnesota. He had kind of done that, and now he could do it at Notre Dame. It needed that unique type of coach. Just like this team needed someone like Marcus Freeman to really get them going.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want to disrespect Marcus Freeman, but Lou Holtz could do everything Marcus Freeman did. We don't know that. It's a different challenge at Notre Dame now than it was when Lou was there. But I think Lou was the right coach at the right time for Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of his greatness. They needed a coach like him. And Marcus Freeman is not like him. That's not good. That's not bad. It's just they're very, very different.
Buy, sell, hold from Carolina Irish 77. Notre Dame could be the best and most dominant team in the last 5 years, go undefeated to a national title this year, and all we'll hear will be, well, they didn't have to play in a conference championship game or a first-round game.
Freaking buy. Absolutely buy. Yes, that'll happen. Now, I don't think it's going to be as prominent as maybe some of us think that it will, but it'll definitely be said. And it'll be said by at least one person on ESPN, and I know exactly who my first pick is to say something like that. It's a bald guy with big ears and wears glasses and works for the SEC network. I'm just saying. None of those things are bad things. They're just descriptive terms. But I think we all know who I'm talking about there.
Yeah. I
He'll
mean,
talk
look,
it down.
There will be a narrative, a counter narrative every single time Notre Dame does something successful. They could beat Bama, Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State in that order, and somebody would say, well, they didn't have to play LSU or Michigan or Ole Miss. Like it will always be something.
We even saw that with Ohio State last year too, Trev. Well, I mean, they wouldn't have even made it if it was a 14 playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's always going to be those type of people. And for Notre Dame, it's even more so.
Buy, sell, hold from Lucky Duck 512. Pete Bravacqua has been a great athletic director so far.
Hold. It's way too early. I don't know that there's a lot of things he's done that are even finalized yet. I'll say this. I'm very encouraged so far, but he's only been at it for like a year. So it's still a little too early for me. So I'm going to hold that one.
Buy, sell, hold. The June 20th weekend will be the most important weekend in the 2026 class.
It's like the next most important weekend, right? I mean, we always talk about like this weekend's going to be big, and this, you know, we had one of those in April that was going to be big. It's going to be a big weekend. I think June 13th might be even bigger. And like June 13th, you've got Caden Finley coming to town. You got Cohen Brown coming to town. You got Devin Fitzgerald coming to town. That's the weekend Grayson McHugh comes to town. So, and I think that's also the weekend that Kerry Wilder is coming to town. Let me check on that. I believe that's when Kari Wilder is coming to town, I believe. So, and then also that is the weekend that I also believe that's the weekend that Kari Adams is also coming to town. So I think the 13th weekend is even bigger. Yeah, Kari Wilder's coming that weekend as well. So you're going to have, I need to update this. You're going to have that weekend uncommitted players. You're going to have Caden Finley, Cohen Brown, Devin Fitzgerald, Grayson McHugh. You're going to have Kari Wilder. You're going to have Kari Adams. You're going to have, and I think Dre Quinn is coming the next weekend. But yeah, I think the 13th is the even bigger weekend between the two. So that's where I'm going to go with that one.
Fair enough. Buy, sell, hold. Kalen DeBoer being in the Bama echo chamber with all the entitlement will hurt him as a head coach going forward.
Oh, I don't. It's possible. It's possible. I'm going to sell that. I was disappointed by some of the things that Kalen DeBoer said this weekend, but some of that stuff is just coaches playing the game. I mean, that's what some of that stuff is. It's possible. I'm going to sell it for now, but it's possible. Sometimes you get a little spoiled. You have too much going for you. Where part of what made you good is the grind and the fact that you were always overlooked and you know you didn't always have it, and you had that chip on your shoulder. You can't do the like. I love the joke that you make about Dabo Swinney's the preseason number one team, and he's still driving the Roy bus. You know what I mean? It's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on this one. I'm just not sure. I think this year will be really telling of how it happens. Truly, I did not love his comments of what he put out. I hope that it was just kind of playing the game a little bit. Hopefully not. That's what he wholeheartedly believes to be true, taking over Nick Saban's dynasty and then saying, come play our schedule when you lost to Vandy in Oklahoma. But you never know. So I'm going to hold because this year will be really telling. Would it surprise me at all if that was just kind of a fluky comment and he's kind of back to his old grind that he was at Washington? No, that wouldn't surprise me not one bit. But I'm going to hold because I just don't know. Buy, sell, hold. Oregon is the most overrated program among the upper echelon teams.
I'm going to sell that. I think it's still Penn State. I think Oregon's describing Oregon is a challenge because I literally had a post on the board today in response to my guy Kenny Moore, is one of my favorite posters. He's an OG on the site, but he loves Oregon. And when I mean loves Oregon, I don't mean like he's a borderline Oregon fan. I just means like he thinks they're really good, to the point where it's almost kind of feel like, oh, God, I don't want to ever have to play Oregon. Like you're afraid of them to a degree. And I think Oregon has become this mythical program in some people's eyes of they're always the most athletic and they're always so talented and they're always this and they're always that. And I'm like, yeah, but what have they proven to make you think that? Oh, they beat Ohio State this year. Oh, great. But then they played them in a game that mattered and they were down 34-0 in the second quarter. Like that's kind of been their thing, like, oh, great. They had to win over Ohio State and they beat Penn State. But like, isn't Penn State's head coach like the guy that we consider the biggest can't win the big game coach in all of college football? Him and Brian Kelly. And then it's like, look what happened to him when they, like in 2022 at Oregon, they played one ranked team all year and that two ranked teams all year. And they were like, what, 0-2 in those two games, against Georgia and Washington the next year. No, it was the next year, 23, they only played one ranked team all year, and it was Washington. And they beat them twice. And it's just like, that team's got to prove a lot to me. And I don't think they're very talented, but I don't think their talent is what people make it out to be. But I think their ranking in the polls tends to usually be pretty accurate. Like they didn't just bump Oregon up to number 1 last year after a couple good wins. Like they had to earn it. And so I don't think that, and they tend to have been a team, at least in recent years, where they weren't always necessarily ranked super high, but still went out and were successful. I mean, this past year, Oregon in the preseason polls was ranked 3rd. Where did Oregon finish in the final rankings? 3rd. It's not overrated. So I think the year before, let me just go back to the 2023. Oregon began the season in the preseason top 25, ranked 15th, finished in the top 10, finished at 8, or finished tied for 6th with Florida State. In 2022, Oregon began the year. Let's see here. 2022, Oregon began the year 11th, and they ended the year, I think, 15th. So they fell a little bit, but when you're within like that 3 to 4 range, I don't really count that as like, oh, they were way off on you. Yeah, I'm 11th, they finished 15th, whatever. So no, I don't necessarily think that they're an overrated team in the poll ranking, but I think they're an over-feared team. I think people fear Oregon more than they should because of what they did 10, 15 years ago. I don't think Oregon's been that team for a while. That doesn't mean they're not really good, but I still think Penn State's the team that's consistently overrated.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Agreed. Buy, sell, hold. Dabo Swinney is the best interim coach turned head coach in the modern era.
Man, I can't even think of anybody else that would be that, even in the same league as him. You know about a guy that was an interim coach that went on to win 2 titles. Goodness gracious. I mean, Ed Orgeron was won 1, but his overall success doesn't sniff what Dabo has done. Not even just titles, just overall success is better than anything he's done. I can't even think of anybody else that would even be in the same conversation.
Yeah, I got
like Marcus Freeman was never the interim coach. He was named the head coach before the bowl game. So yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had Bob Stoops had a big bowl game win a couple years ago as an interim head coach. Remember that?
Yeah.
I think they beat Oregon. That was pretty funny actually. But I'm trying to think. I don't even know who else would even be in there. Because I mean, Larry Coker. Well, because like Larry Coker won that 1 title, but then he pretty much bombed out after that. So I would probably, I don't know that anyone comes even close to that. Can anyone think of another guy that was put in an interim basis that went on to have a 15-plus year career, multiple national titles and multiple other playoff trips and title appearances? I mean, he won 2 titles and he's been in the title game 2 other times, right? 19 and 15. Right? Won it in 16 and 18, made it to the title game in 15 and 19. Correct?
Yep.
It's pretty good. So I'll buy that.
Yeah, I mean, I was No. Was Ryan Day an interim head coach? Yeah.
No.
Day was named OSU's interim head coach as Urban Meyer was placed on administrative
Yeah,
leave.
but then Urban came back. It was the beginning of the 2018 season.
Yeah.
It was the first 3 games of the year. They beat like TCU, Oregon State, and somebody else. And then Urban came back. Urban then was the coach the rest of the year, and then they named Day his replacement.
Gotcha.
So, like, where I think this question is going from, and even still, Ryan Day's still not better than Dabo yet. But I think the premise of this question is a guy that was named an interim and then turned it into the full-time gig. And this would be that's a different situation. Because Urban wasn't fired, he was suspended.
No, I got you. Buy, sell, hold from We Are Notre Dame. If Notre Dame wins at least one playoff game this season, the 2026 and 2027 season will be championship or bust.
I think they're already kind of there anyway. I mean, as far as you know what? I never like that. Actually, I'm gonna sell that because I'm not a big fan of the championship or bust type of mentality because you never know what you're going against. And so let's say that Notre Dame in 2026 makes it to the title game, but some other team has an LSU 2019 or a Miami 2001 type of season type of team. Notre Dame loses that game by a touchdown. Am I going to say that season was a bust? That was a heck of a season. You just got beat by a better team. So, but I will say making a title game run will be the expectation with the championship being the ceiling of that team. Both of those teams are going to be capable of winning championships and that should be the expectation for those two teams. But I'm going to sell on the idea of saying it's a championship or bust just because you never know what kind of team you're going against that season or what circumstances you got to overcome.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I'm going to buy it, but I look at it from a different lens. I look at it like when I think of championship or bust, I kind of think of like, what is the expectation at Notre Dame? It's to win a national title. And that's I think that's the expectation that they should have with the makeup of their roster. I mean, this season and the next couple seasons with who they have coming in, who potentially could be coming back. To Brian's point, there's a lot of moving pieces. I don't love the term bust because
that's my problem with it. Yes.
But it's kind of one of those things. I don't know a better word to insert there.
Well, it's not even about a word, Trev. It's like, okay, so here's what it should be. If Notre Dame, that I would buy it. If Notre Dame wins at least one playoff game this season, the 26 and 27 seasons, the expectations for the 26 and 27 season will be a championship. Buy. Absolutely, the expectation will be that they win a championship at least one of those 2 seasons. Absolutely buy. But where I can't get on board is to say that if they don't win a championship, it's a bust. Now, if they get beat in the first round of those years, that's a bust. That's a wildly underachieving where you should have been. But that's what I'm saying is it's the bust word. So, like, I think you nailed it, Trevor. It's like the expectation for those 2 teams will be to compete for and win a championship. End of sentence. End of story. We should all buy that. But when you start saying, but if they don't win it, it's a failure. Well, no, I can't say that. I can't say that.
Yeah.
If they go get beat in the first round if they're the number 1 seed and they get beat in the first round by like Boise State, who's the 16 seed, yeah, it's a freaking bust. But it depends on the circumstance and how deep they go and who they get beat by and all that type of stuff. But
I will confidently say I think Notre Dame is in a situation where every single year for the foreseeable future, it is playoffs or bust. Like if Notre Dame doesn't make an expanded 12, 14, or 16 team playoff, I don't care what happens throughout that season. I will deem it as a bust. It's like, I don't know how you don't make that be ranked somewhere in the top 15 once it expands.
Yeah. Like if they don't make a playoff, yeah. Like I'm okay saying a season is a bust. I'm okay saying that because that's happened before. I get tired of like Chief Brody said, Ohio State views every season without a title as a bust. When does Notre Dame reach that point? Hopefully never. Because again, I think that's a very shallow point of view that I understand what is being said, but it doesn't speak to what we should be talking about. There's a difference between saying something, the expectation is this, and then the only other option is failure. I think that's silly. Can Notre Dame have a season that's a failure? Absolutely. Can Notre Dame have a successful season that ends in disappointment where they don't reach their full potential? Absolutely. Like this past season, Trevor, it's Notre Dame. The expectation was what? The expectation is win a championship. They didn't. Does that mean the season was a bust? I'm not saying that to you because I know you're not advocating this point. I'm just making a point. No, it wasn't a bust. Did they fall short of the expectations of the University of Notre Dame football program? Yes, they did. But was it an incredible season that moved the needle forward? It absolutely was. And that's the difference. It's like this notion of championship bust. I just feel like when that's just your general comment, that is a very shallow point of view. That is a very simplistic, unnuanced point of view. That's just like it's a sentiment we use when we're talking with our boys at a party. It's not something that we use when we're trying to provide real analysis when it comes to championship or bust. Now, what I think you can do, Trev, is you can pull it back a little bit and say playoff or bust. Like if you
that's what I said
this year,
yeah.
and like that's where I'm totally cool with that. But when you look at those two teams and you say those two teams should absolutely be championship or bust, if they don't win a championship, it's a disappointment. No, I'm not going there because we don't know the circumstances. Now, if they go out and get beat by an inferior opponent in a game where they played bad and weren't prepared, that's a bust. It just depends on the circumstances of it. But I've never been a big fan of the championship or bust, So, and no, we're not equivocating on the meaning of bust. I know exactly what the meaning of bust means. What I'm saying is that I am not going to call a season a failure, a bust, if you get to the championship game and lose that game in every circumstance. I understand what it means. Like, it drives me nuts when people say, well, I don't think no, I understand what the word means. I'm saying I don't accept it as being the standard for the program in the way that you're using, or in any way. You could use it in any way possible. And I'm not going to sit there and say that if you don't win a championship, it's a bust. No, I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is this team is the expectation is a championship. And if you don't win a championship, then you're falling short of what the standard is for your program. But it doesn't mean that that team or that season was a bust or a failure or anything else along those lines. That's possible for those teams, but it's not championship or bust. And that's the issue I have with it.
Buy, sell, hold. SMU and Notre Dame could become some kind of rivalry with the projection both teams are on, depending upon the game in 2026.
Sell. I have a hard time with Notre Dame and SMU being rivals. I don't know that adds anything to Notre Dame. So I'm sell that. I think it could become a really good, like, in conference type of rivalry where it's like, hey, they're a good team the next 10 years. You're a good team. You're trying to recruit Texas. You have some. So, like, I'm not completely dismissing that there can't be some, like, hey, man, we have some recruiting battles against each other, which they do. They beat Notre Dame for Jalen Cooper last year. Notre Dame beat them for Tiki Holo this year. Maybe they play a decent amount in the league, in the ACC crossover games. And so there's a little bit of a mutual dislike or a mutual respect. But for it to become like a rival, like I think Clemson can be, I don't see that. I don't see that.
No, I don't either. And before we talk about like the projection of SMU, I need to see them have more than like one good season personally. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I view rivalries a lot of like games that have like national implications. And I don't really see Notre Dame and SMU being like a national implication type of game. Plus, I love rivalries. Truly. I don't think Notre Dame needs to start a rivalry with every team in college football either. So I wouldn't see the necessity of it, to be honest.
Agree.
Buy, sell, hold from We Are Notre Dame. Illinois will be Indiana of 2025 and make the playoffs.
I'm going to sell that. I like this Illinois team. I'm not quite ready to jump on the playoff bandwagon yet. I don't know that they have the offense to do that yet. We'll see. I mean, also that really good receiver, Pat Bryant. I like the kid they got out of West Virginia, but they're still a team that's going to want to control the ball and play really good defense. And I think they'd be a really good football team, but I don't see them being an 11-1 team. I also think their schedule, like Indiana of 2024 is not Indiana of 2024 if they would have played a tougher schedule. Like, we can admit that. I can sit there and say Indiana got in the playoff last year because their schedule wasn't as hard as, maybe it would have been in other years for a host of reasons, including the fact that Michigan wasn't very good last year overall. But I look at Illinois this year and I just see a team that's going to have a little bit of a tougher schedule. And you look at Indiana last year, what's funny is people, their schedule is soft. Well, you wouldn't have thought that if you were looking at it a year earlier. Like, if you were looking at it in December or January of 2024, you'd have looked at next year's schedule and been like, dude, poor Indiana next year's not only got to play at Ohio State, but they got to play the two teams about to play for the national championship, Washington and Michigan. They got to play those two teams. Good night. That's going to be tough, man. Well, at least they get them at home. Like, that's what the conversation would have been. So it ended up not being that way. But I look at Illinois this year, and I don't know that I see a team that's going to have the offensive firepower to pull off what Indiana did last year. And with their schedule, they got to play at Indiana. They got to play Ohio State at home. They got to play at Wisconsin and at Washington. So, I mean, and they got to play USC at home. So, I mean, it's a schedule that's manageable to where maybe they can make that run. But I just think between a home game against Ohio State and then games at Wisconsin, at Washington, at Indiana, and that doesn't get into the at Duke game, which is a game they could lose at Duke. That's not going to be an easy game. I just don't see an 11-1 playoff team for Illinois. I think they'll be very good. I think they'll be a team that's in the potentially in the conversation in November, Trev, but I just I don't have them in.
I'm going to sell this for a couple of reasons. One, for all the things that you listed off, I think their schedule is going to be tougher. But two, I don't think they're going to be the Indiana of this year's playoffs. The thing that made Indiana so special is they literally came out of nowhere. They're horrible the year before. Got a new head coach and made the playoffs. Illinois finished the season ranked in the top 20 last year and have a good quarterback coming back. And, so I like their foundation is a little bit more sound going into this season than what Indiana's was perceived to be coming into this year. I mean, Indiana historically has been like arguably the worst college football program in the history of college football. They're the first program to 700 losses. They've only made 5 postseason appearances since 2000 and lost all 5 of them. Like, they've been bad for a very long time. And to go from that to 11-1 and make the playoffs like that, and it's like that to me is what made the Indiana run so special, not just because they made it because of who they were. All those years before. Illinois went 10-3 last year and finished 20th in the playoffs.
And I think they'll be top 20 again team this year. I just don't think they're going to be top 12.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually be top 11. Because I think the group of 5 team this year, unlike last year, is going to come from outside. I mean, you might have to be in the top 10 this year to get in the playoff as an at-large.
Yeah.
Much like last year.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, it wasn't like that last year because Arizona State finished 12th. So only one team got bumped out. This year, I could see 2 teams get bumped out because I don't see a group of 5 in the top 12 like we saw last year. And then you could still have a conference champion outside the top. It wouldn't shock me if the Big 12 champ is outside the top 12 this year. Not because I don't think the Big 12 teams are good. Just like we keep talking about, Trevor. Like, I think that league, there's a risk of them beating each other up.
Literally.
All the time, like they did last year.
Buy, sell, hold. LSU loses the first game of the season again this year, too.
I mean, on paper, this is the toughest game they've had so far. I mean, the Florida State game in the first year, that was an unranked team. I believe that was I believe both teams. I believe that Florida State was unranked that season. Let me just go look at this real quick, Trev. So I know Florida State the next year was supposed to be pretty good, but yeah, in 2022 when Florida State beat them, both teams were unranked. And then the next year, 2023, the Florida State was ranked 8th and LSU was ranked 5th. And then in 2024, LSU was ranked 13th and USC was ranked 23rd. There's a pretty good chance that when you kick the season off this year, that Clemson's going to be a top 5 to 6 team. And the other big difference is all 3 of those games are on neutral fields. Now, neutral field in Florida for Florida State in 23, and then obviously neutral field in Las Vegas for USC, blah, blah, blah. But I don't care if they were near where those teams played. This is Clemson. This is Death Valley. Like, this is the other Death Valley. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to be a really good opponent that's really good in the trenches, really good on both sides of the ball, like a team you have to really worry about. And so I think this is going to be the toughest opener that Kelly's had so far.
Yep. Agreed. And if past history tells us anything, he's probably going to lose it based on what's happened the last couple seasons. So, yeah, for now, I'll buy it because I also think Clemson's going to be pretty darn good this year. Buy, sell, hold from P. Hamilton 16. Kirby Smart watched film of both Notre Dame and Indiana before the playoff game and told his staff to start focusing on Notre Dame.
I'm by that. I mean, they broke down both teams. You have a big enough staff now; you can do both. But yeah, trust me, they were focused on Notre Dame.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they did their due diligence on Indiana, but trust me, they were focused on Notre Dame.
Buy, sell, hold. Keon Keeley would have been a 3-year player at Notre Dame.
Sell. I don't know. Sell. I mean, it's hard for me to go from what he is now to 3-year player. He would have had a shot to be, but I'll sell that.
And then buy, sell, hold. Bryce Young is a top 10 NFL draft pick.
I'll buy that Bryce has the opportunity to be that.
It's fair.
I mean, it's hard for me to say that a guy that has played as a freshman and did some nice things, but it's not like he wasn't like, look, here's what I'm talking about. Okay, so Bryce did some nice things for Notre Dame last year. No question about it. We're super excited about what he brings to the table and the kind of player he could be and all that type of stuff, right? And last year we saw the kind of year he had. Bryce finished with, 23 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Excited about the potential for his future. Okay, no question about it. But Dylan Stewart last year had 23 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. You know, Colin Simmons last year had 48 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. That's a guy I have no problem saying that's going to be a top 10 draft pick, barring injury, because they're already showing that type of ability. Bryce has the tools, but Bryce has not shown to be that type of player yet. I think he can be. So I'll buy that he can be, but he isn't that right now. Now he may be in 2025, but we can just base off of what we've seen so far.
Yeah. As of today, I'm selling. I think he has all the potential to be. Would it surprise me if that my answer changes by the end of the 2025 season? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, you know, he's still young. He's still developing. But if he had the type of season that, you know, a Colin Simmons did or a Dylan Stewart did, he probably would have made his way into the starting lineup at some point for Notre Dame last season. And he didn't. He was still a little raw. He was still developing as a player. I think this is just a lofty expectation to put on somebody who had 1.5 sacks last year as a true freshman. He has a long way to go. And when everything is all said and done, would it surprise me? No. But right now, not right now. Buy, sell, hold from Josh CSP 77. Notre Dame will end up with a first-round bye come playoff time.
So this is Josh Phillips, who's a member who's been posting here a long time, but also is now a member of the board. So he joined the board in this last week or so. So I appreciate that, Josh. But Trev, you saw my projection for the playoff that where I'm at right now. That may change by the time we get to the season, but right now, my playoff seeding, and I'm not going to give it away till we get to that show, but I definitely have Notre Dame as a first-round bye.
Yeah, I'm absolutely buying this. I think when everything is all said and done, Notre Dame will be a top 4 team in the country, for sure. Buy, sell, hold. Only 3 SEC teams will make the playoffs once again.
I do want to do this, Trev. I do want to give one little. I do want to give one little nugget that'll be fun. So let me just pull up my thing here real quick. So I sent it to you and Vince, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me find that little. I hope I still have it on this computer because I sent it to you guys on a different computer. So, yep, here we go. I'll give you guys this. Oh, shoot. I almost brought it up and it would have put it on display because the way that this thing goes. But pulling up my sheet, I'll tell you guys this. I do have Notre Dame playing the Buckeyes in round 2 in the quarterfinals. I'll just give you that.
Nice.
Give you that little teaser.
You do know that we're going to get some submissions next week. This is based on Brian's projections. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame beats Ohio State by double digits in the quarterfinals.
Yes,
of the
that's absolutely right.
Playoff, right?
That's absolutely right.
Buy, sell, hold. Only 3 SEC teams will make the playoffs once again, and the SEC homers will be crying and whining. I definitely buy that the SEC homers will be crying and whining. They could get 4 teams in, and that 5th team that could be ranked number 13th also should have been in over the undeserving second ACC team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I buy that there will be crying and whining regardless, no matter what the scenario is, barring it being all 4 of the teams that receive buys are all SEC teams, and then they get 2 at-large bids like that. Maybe that's a little bit extreme, but as of right now, that's just kind of the taste that they've left in my mouth. So I have no issue saying it. Only 3 teams. I think Texas will. I think Alabama will. Then between like Georgia, LSU, because they had 3.
Who'd you say? You said Texas, Alabama,
I think Texas and
Georgia.
Bama. Well, I said Texas and Bama will, I think. But then between LSU,
Georgia.
No, I was
okay.
Just thinking out loud. So I think Texas will. I think Bama will. And then I was saying between Georgia and LSU.
Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Maybe, Ole Miss, maybe. There's a lot of potential options for 3 and 4. I have 4 in my prediction right now. I have 4 SEC teams in.
Yeah. And then I'm also thinking, because another thing you have to factor into this too is like what some of the other conferences will be doing in this. If more SEC teams kind of vault up in the rankings, I think the Big Ten overall takes some like a slight step back this season. Yeah, I'm going to sell this. I think 4 will make it.
I have in mind, Trev, I have 3 Big Ten teams this year, I believe. That's a Big Ten team. That's a Big Ten team, and that's a Big Ten team. So I have 4 SECs, 3 Big Tens, 2 ACCs, 1 Big 12, and then an AAC team. That's 7. And then, of course, an independent in Notre Dame. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Breakdown. So what does that be? 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, right? 4 SECs, 3 Big Tens, 2 as ACCs, 1 Big 12, 1 group of 5 from the AAC, and then Notre Dame as an independent. That's my 12.
Nice. So you would sell this then also?
I would sell this, yeah. No, I mean, I'm selling that only 3 teams will make it. They will still cry about whoever the 5th team is.
That's what I said.
Whoever the 6th team is. So I'm with you. I'm on that. They're going to cry and whine. And if the premise of your question or submission is, will they be crying and whining? I'm buying that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm selling that only 3 teams make it. I said all last year, Trev. I said all last year, guys, the SEC is going to be down this year. It's not going to be a great league. You're banking on Lane Kiffin to carry the day for you and a team from the Big 12. And I said it was going to be down, and it was down. I think this year the SEC is going to be a lot better. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be the dominant league they were, a few years ago, but I think that they're going to probably be the best league in college football next year, whereas I think last year was the Big Ten. It's not going to be by a ton, but I think they will be. Now, and the other thing is the way that the schedules are set up too, because this factors in. I don't think you're going to see the same sort of eating their own type of thing that you're going to see from like the Big 12. And that's partly factors in too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Buy, sell, hold from Aiden Benami. We let Michigan have Matt Ludwig. He wasn't a take for Notre Dame.
That's a hard sell. They would have loved to have had Matt Ludwig. Now, I'm not saying he was their number 1 tight end because I don't believe that he was. I believe that Ian Premer's their number 1 tight end. That's what I believe to be true. But if Matt Ludwig would have called up Notre Dame and said, "Hey, I want to come to Notre Dame," we would have absolutely taken him. Yeah, we don't play that game where we pretend like every kid they lose they didn't want. Matt Ludwig was a good football player that Notre Dame would have taken, no question about it. But I'll also be honest, he wasn't their number one guy. But he was a guy that he was in that A group of guys that if they call and say they want to commit, they'd have taken him. For absolutely.
Fair enough. By so hold, Pete Rose having the most hits in Major League Baseball means he's the best hitter of all time.
Yeah, sell that. And look, I'm a Reds fan. Love Pete Rose. Saw Pete Rose play as a kid when he was manager. He was a player manager, but mom and dad were big Pete Rose fans. Dad also liked Johnny Bench a lot. I was more of a Davey Concepcion, Tony Perez guy of the Big Red Machine because they were still on the team also when I got a little bit older. But that's a lifetime. That's like a lifetime. That's a longevity award. And that doesn't take away from Pete Rose's greatness. And I'm a little upset that they didn't let him into the Hall of Fame until after he died. That kind of pisses me off. Pete Rose deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. And now I've always said, look, don't let him work in baseball anymore. Don't let him manage. Don't let him have a GM position. But the guy absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame for what he did. He is an all-time great player. He's a winner, played multiple positions, all that stuff. But that doesn't make him the best hitter. It just means he was the most prolific hitter over a period of time. Pete Rose is an all-time great player. World champion, played all over the place, Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. But he's not the hitter Ted Williams was. I don't think he's the hitter Ichiro was. I think if Ichiro would have played his whole career in Major League Baseball, like in America, who knows what he would have done. I'm actually going to. So, is there a site that maybe shows all his production from major leagues and Japan? I'd be curious about that. So Ichiro this is wild. It's a wild stat. I saw this one time. Ichiro Suzuki had 3,089 hits in his Major League Baseball career. 3,000 is you're an automatic Hall of Famer. His rookie year, he was 27 years old because he had played in Japan. He'd played professionally in Japan for a long time. And his career batting average was 311. And that it was only 311 because at the age of from 39 to 45, he hit 262, 284, 229, 291, 255, and 205. But from the age of 27 until the age of 38, he had Let's see, 30. Where's that one at? Yeah, he had 3 seasons of less than 300. And they were at age 37, 38 seasons. Then 38. So from 27 to 37, he had 1 year where he hit sub 300. And he hit 4 years, he had over 250 or 350, excuse me. And he was just a completely different type of hitter. And he was a great hitter. So Pete Rose, on the other hand, great hitter, career 303 batting average. Just another phenomenal talent. But I think Ichiro might have been a better pure hitter. I just think that he might have been. But I still say the greatest pure hitter in the history of the game is Ted Williams. Because he could hit for average, he could hit for power. I mean, he was just, I love guys that strike out less than they walk, and that's partly what makes Pete great. Pete had over 1,500 walks in his career. He had 1,100 strikeouts. Ichiro in his career was not quite that. He didn't walk a ton, but like Ted Williams' numbers are just like some of his numbers though as a hitter are just nuts. And I've pointed this out to you before, Trev, is the guy took 2 breaks in the middle of his career to go fight in a war and still did what he did. Let me pull up his career numbers real quick because some of this stuff is just amazing. I apologize, guys. I'm a little under the weather today, so I'm trying to mute myself. But so Ted Williams, in first 4 years in Major League Baseball, Trev, he hit 327 as a rookie. That was in 1939, and he was 21 years old. He hit 327, had a 104.5 OPS. He hit 344 his next year. He hit 406 at 24 years old, 1941, and hit 356 the next year. He didn't play in 1943, didn't play in 1944, Didn't play in 1945. Came back in 1946 and hit 342 with 37 doubles, 8 triples, 38 homers. Had 123 RBIs. He walked 156 times and struck out 44 times. Like, it just unbelievable. Just absolutely unbelievable hitter. And it was really, really impressive what he did. So, I mean, you're talking about his major league career average is 344. He had 524 home runs in 705 at bats. So let me just do something here real quick. I want to figure something out here real quick. But like, there's been so many great hitters: Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth. But I think that what Ted Williams did was unbelievable. So let me give you a little statistical. You know how I love to do this projection stuff, Trev. So Ted Williams had 521 homers on 7,706 at bats. Okay, if you give him the same number of at bats that Hank Aaron had, who I believe is the true home run king, you know how many home runs that Ted Williams would have hit if he hit the same number on the same at bats that Hank Aaron had? 943. Think about that. That's an incredible statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would do it.
Incredible statistic. And he did that while not playing 3 full seasons. And keep in mind, 21, 22, he didn't play his age 25, 26, or 27 seasons. And then in 1952, he only played 6 games because of the Korean War. Only played 37 games the next year because of the Korean War. You know what he hit in those 2 years? He hit 400 in the 1 year in 6 games. And then the next year in 37 games, he hit 407. And then comes back from that, hits 345, 356, 345, 338. Like that's an unbelievable statistic. And so let me see here. He was born in 1918. So in 1958, at 40 years old, in 129 games, he hit 328 with an OPS over 1,000, 23 doubles, 2 triples, 26 homers, 98 RBI, 98 walks, and struck out 49 times at 40 years old, after having played that long and fought in 2 wars as a fighter pilot. That was, that's, in my opinion, greatest hitter of all time.
Strong case for it, that's for sure. Strong case for it.
Yep.
Buy, sell, hold. Hicks will always be better than the Knicks.
Well, so far they have been. What, they're up 3-1 now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll buy that.
Have you watched any of that series? It's a lot of fun.
I've watched the last minute of each series, of each game so far. That's about it.
Last minute?
I don't really watch. Yeah. Like, oh, look, the game's almost over. Let me go see what happens. So, yeah, I don't watch a lot of NBA basketball anymore. I haven't watched. It's more than I've watched of was it Wolves and
Wolves and Thunder?
Thunder, yeah. I haven't watched any of that. Yep.
Fair enough. Well, I'm buying. Go Sirs. Buy, sell, hold. Brian's rants are better than his mom's biscuits.
I feel like I should not answer this question because my mom watches the show, but I don't know that biscuits are my mom's strength, so I'll go and buy that. They're not as lovely as my mom's biscuits, but my mom, like my mom's grandma made these flaky biscuits when we were kids that I really liked. It's like about the only memory I really have of her. These homemade biscuits, but yeah, my mom never made like homemade. My mom's a phenomenal cook. Trev, you've had her food before, the tailgates, but she was never like a homemade. I've probably made more homemade bread in my life than my mom had. So she was always when we had biscuits, she'd get those out of a can. So, yeah.
Fair enough. I'm going to plead the fifth on this one. One of them is about my boss, and the other one's about my boss's mom. So I'm going to plead the fifth.
You are absolutely in a lose-lose situation, Trevor.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that shows wisdom beyond your years, my friend.
I have my moments. I have my moments. Buy, sell, hold from IM Tenzin. Best end of the season record: Boise State, Memphis, or Navy.
I'm going to go Navy.
Mm-hmm. I'm with that. Buy, sell, hold. Average margin of victory in regular season will be 30-plus points per game.
Sell. Like, very easy sell. That would mean if Notre Dame scored 40 points a game, their opponents would score 10. No. They're going to be really good, but no. Sell.
That would be no. Buy, sell, hold. Football would be safer if we removed all padding like rugby.
I have no idea. I don't know about injury reports from rugby or anything like that. I know it would suck and it'd be boring, so I'm going to sell just because I think it would suck and be boring. But I don't know about safer. I've heard people say that. I don't think it would be. The rules are different in football than rugby.
Yeah, the style of play is different.
Yeah,
I mean, you do different things. Plus, I don't really want to watch Jeremiah Love sprinting around in a polo. So,
very, very good point. Like I said, it would suck and be boring.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying rugby sucks and is boring. I'm saying football without pads would suck and be boring.
Sure. Buy, sell, hold from Irish fan Mini. Lincoln Riley is USC's coach to start the 2026 season.
Ooh, boy. What is your thought on that, Trev?
I'm going to buy it. I think the move that they did to get Chad Bowden from Notre Dame and what they're doing on the recruiting trail right now, I think bought him some time. So I think they're somewhat linked together. I don't think that it's a coincidence that Chad went in and immediately started talking about how good of a recruiter his head coach is, because USC in the win-loss column has been digressing every single year he's been in town. So I'm going to buy it, but I think he's going to start the 2026 season, but on the hot seat.
So I still think Lincoln Riley would like to go to the NFL. That's what I think. But I think he's going to need more than like one good, like 9-3 year to maybe have that opportunity. I also don't think USC is going to be bad enough to fire him this year. I don't think that either. Unless, well, yeah, I'll buy that, but I don't do it with great conviction, because I do think if the right job comes along, he'll want out.
Fair.
And I think, NFL is, I mean, hey, if Cliff Kingsbury can get hired as a head coach in the NFL, Lincoln Riley can get hired as a head coach in the NFL.
It's fair. Buy, sell, hold. Brent Venables is Oklahoma's coach to start the 2026 season.
Man, how much time does he have left on his contract? Because, see, this is the thing that factors so much into this stuff, guys, is that, look, Brian Kelly could go 5-7 this year, and they may want to fire him, but it doesn't mean that they can. This is year 4 of a 6-year contract for Brent Venables, so if they wanted to fire him, they could probably get out of it pretty well. I'm not sure what I feel about Oklahoma yet, Trev. I think they're going to be actually a little better than they were last year, but not by much. But is that enough to say? Like, will they fire him if he's 7-5?
I think
that I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about Oklahoma's dynamics. I would think so, because if they're like 7-5, I mean, dude, you've gone 6-6, 6-6, 10-2, or 10-3, or 6-7, 10-3, 6-7, and then you go 7-5 this year. Man, that's an interesting one.
I mean,
very interesting one.
I was about to say, if they go 7-5 and he's still able to keep his job, he would have to have some marquee wins on there. But I mean, their schedule isn't like the tail end of that, really from October to the end of the year, is kind of rough. October 11th through the end of the year,
You bite your tongue, Trevor. It's an SEC team. Every schedule's tough in the SEC.
Fair.
They can lose 5 games and still have 7 marquee wins. It's the SEC.
True.
Come on now.
That's true. I did forget about that. But they got
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's funny. They got Texas in the Red River, and then they go at South Carolina, home against Ole Miss, at Tennessee, then a bye, then at Alabama, then home against Missouri, and then home against LSU to finish out their season.
They also have Michigan at home in week 2, and then 2 weeks later play Auburn at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if they're able, based on this schedule, if they're able to kind of pull a Billy Napier type thing from Florida from last season and like limp out with like an 8-5 type of record, maybe. But I don't know, man.
Because like here's the thing, Trev. They could lose to Texas on a neutral field, at Oklahoma, at Tennessee, at Alabama, and let's say home to Ole Miss. And that's their 5 losses. If that were the case, they still would have a win over Michigan, Auburn, Missouri, and LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they beat out LSU and then, or lose to LSU, but then beat Ole Miss, then you add Ole Miss into that. So even 7-5 with losses to Texas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and all 4 of those games are away from home. And then you lose to one of Ole Miss, LSU, or Michigan, you still have wins over all those other teams. It's a pretty challenging schedule, in my opinion. It's not like it's a pretty challenging schedule, but it's Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think some of it's going to come down to what it looks like too. I mean, if they just go and get blown out, like last year, they lost 35-9 against South Carolina. They lost 34-3 against Texas. They lost, 37-17 at LSU. Like if it's not competitive,
and that's the rub.
Yep, because Florida, what they were able to do, even they did lose to Georgia, but the final score was not reflective of how close that game was at one point. They lost to Tennessee on the road in overtime. Talk about Florida from last season, and then they were still able to beat a top 10 Ole Miss team at the time. They beat a ranked LSU team. They did that in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
So if they can minimize Oklahoma, the blowout losses, but even then, it's Oklahoma. To your point, I don't.
The problem for that, Trevor, is they kind of might have. I have a feeling Alabama's going to want to take out a little something on Oklahoma this year.
Yeah, yeah.
I just it's a bye and all that, but they're going to need to me 8-4 against that schedule saves his job. I think.
Yes.
7-5 gets a little bit dicey,
Yep.
but I think your point about you got to avoid the blowouts is a very good point. Very, very good point.
Yeah, if you're going to lose games against that schedule, you have to show that you're competitive. But if you're losing 35-9, nah.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold Sharon Moore as Michigan's coach to start the 2026 season.
Buy. Like I don't think Michigan's going to be very good this year, but very good 7-5, 8-4 for them this year. I don't think they're going to be like this 5-7, 4-8 team. And in 2 years, if let's say they go 7-5 again, he'll still have a win over Ohio State. He'll still have a win over Alabama. He'll still have a win over USC, and he'll have the recruiting class that he's had. Like, no, I think he'll be the head coach. They'd have to go sub 500 for him to get fired. Now, The thing is they'll be able to get out of his contract easily because it's not that big. Kind of like if Marcus Freeman was an absolute disaster, Notre Dame would have been able to get out of his original contract very cheaply. Same with Sharon Moore. And then probably same with Dan Lanning in Oregon as well. Like if he was a disaster his first couple of years, they'd have been able to get out of that cheap because his first time coach. But they'll also have some reasons in there to say, hey, we had to suspend you for this. They'll be able to find cause and use it that way to try to avoid some of the PR disaster. But no, I think he'll do enough here this year to say, oh no, let's give him one more year.
Yeah.
Because in fairness, he walked into a really rough situation. They lost the entire coaching staff outside of him. They had 19 guys from that team in 2023 go to the combine. They lost a ton.
I mean,
you got to show him a little bit of patience. I mean, he had to rebuild that sucker from the ground up with all the stuff lingering over his head that happened under Jim Harbaugh. Now, he was part of it, clearly, because otherwise, why are they suspending him for 2 games?
Mm-hmm.
But I think he gets more than – they'd have to be really bad this year for me to think that they'll fire him.
Or another scandal type of thing comes out where it's just bad for, okay, hey, dude, you just can't be here. Look, the thing that Sharon Moore has going for him in the Michigan circle is he's 2-0 as a head coach against Ohio State. He was the interim head coach that filled in for Jim Harbaugh at the end of the 2023 season, and he beat them outright on the road this past season as their full-time season head coach, and then ended the win in a bowl win against Alabama. So I think he's there in 26, barring either a colossal downfall or another scandal, which wouldn't surprise me. It's crazy to say this. Another scandal coming out about Michigan, I think, is more likely than a complete colossal downfall of a season for them where they go 3-9. And I'm saying not even to be hyperbolic. With all the things that have came out the last 2 seasons about this program, Wouldn't surprise me. And then buy, sell, hold, Irish Fan Mini. Over the next 10 years, the only programs capable of winning a national title are Notre Dame. Do you want to do each of these buy, sell, hold?
Yeah, let's do that. I think that makes more sense.
Cool. So Notre Dame.
Buy.
Absolutely. Georgia.
Buy.
Alabama.
Buy. These are capable. These aren't ones that we are predicting they will, obviously, but capable, yes. Buy.
Texas.
Buy.
Ohio State.
Buy.
Michigan.
Buy.
Clemson.
Buy.
Penn State.
Buy.
Oregon.
Buy.
LSU.
Buy. I'll buy all 10 of those teams as capable of winning. Where I would sell this list is I would sell that those are the only 10. I think if Miami makes good hires from a coaching standpoint, that's a program capable of winning a championship. We've seen them win championships in different decades. They won championships in the 80s. They won championships in the 90s. And they won championship in 2001, played for it in 2002. They've got money. That's a program that is capable of winning a national championship. The Big 12 is an interesting one because I don't know that there's a program there, but there's a couple that I kind of would have my eye on if circumstances hit differently. But I think you look at the Big 10. I think you have to add USC there. USC is capable of winning a championship over the next 10. Because, again, we're talking about the next 10 years. The odds of Lincoln Riley being their head coach in 5 years. I mean, they could go out there and hire their version of Marcus Freeman like they did in Pete Carroll and win again. USC's capable of winning a championship.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. I think Washington's capable of winning a championship. I mean, they just played for it a year ago. In a 14, which is harder to get in. A 14 playoff is harder to get in. So I think they're capable of playing for it. I'd throw both of them in there too, Trev.
Oh, yeah. Look, 10 years is a long time in the college football. If you would have told me in 2015 or 14 that Michigan was going to win a national title in 2023, I would have been like, yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
And here we are. So it's I'm with you. It's
you have
definitely
to me, you have to throw Tennessee in there as capable. You have to throw Texas A&M in there as capable. Florida, I think you have to throw in there as capable. If Florida hires the right coach, that's a program that can flat out absolutely win. There's a history there. I think Texas A&M is the one you could push back on a little bit because they haven't won a title in my lifetime, but they've been a top 5 team several times. But it's also your recruiting state of Texas. That's the one I think you could push back on me on. I think Tennessee's certainly capable of winning. So, I mean, there's at least 5 other teams capable of it. There's not 15 teams capable of winning a championship right now. My list for 2025 is like 8. And then it'll vary from year to year. But I don't know, like right now, there are certain programs I just mentioned that I don't think are capable of winning it right now. Florida, to me, is not capable of winning it right now. I don't think Billy Napier's a championship coach. I don't think LSU's capable of winning it right now. I don't know that Penn State's capable of winning it right now. I don't know that Michigan is capable of winning it right. I don't know that Sharon Moore is capable of winning a championship right now. But if Sharon Moore leaves in a couple of years, Florida State's another one. Amanesh Patel, Florida State's another one. Completely forgot about Florida State. That's another one that's capable of it. So, but like Michigan's not capable right now, but if they replace Sharon Moore with a really good coach, they're certainly capable of winning a championship. There are certain programs that just don't have the resources to go out and compete in the modern age. Just Baylor's not going to win a national championship. Iowa State's not going to win a national championship.
No.
Iowa's not going to win a national championship. But those other teams are. Like, you know, then you get into some of the like Michigan States and Wisconsin's, and I'm like, you know, there's been years where Wisconsin in a 12-team playoff might have been able to do some damage. But like those were also years when I don't think the Big Ten was as strong as it is now. So I'm not ready to go there. I mean, there's a lot of teams you could say, well, what ifs, but you got to have some kind of history of success at that high level. But like, I don't know that Louisville's a program that's capable of winning a championship. You know, they're capable of really good, but winning it all, I just don't see it.
Oh, yeah. Some of those teams that you were mentioning too, like the Wisconsins, like those teams are fighting to get back to conference relevancy.
Right.
You know, like their national championship is not on the minds, I would
Right.
have to imagine.
And let's not kid ourselves that prior to Barry Alvarez showing up, Wisconsin was a joke. Wisconsin football was terrible before Barry Alvarez showed up. And that's where I go back to. Like, there's got to be some level of, like, you weren't just good once with this one coach who happened to be really, really amazing.
What about in the next 10 years? What about a program like Auburn? What do you think of them?
I think Auburn's ability to win a championship was really hindered by NIL. Because I think Auburn, and people are not going to like this, but I think Auburn is one of the dirtiest programs around. And I think their 2 championships were bought and paid for. And I don't know that they can get away with that now in this era. But they did win one in 2010, and they did play for one in 2013. So I can't completely dismiss it, but I'm skeptical of that in the modern era.
Sure.
But if you were to tell me you think they should belong in there, Trev, okay. Cool. I'm not going to argue with you.
Fair enough. Yeah, they were just one of the programs that I don't know where to fit them.
Yeah.
Because in my lifetime, their window has just been so, it's just been so wide. Like, it's not like in Iowa where it's like at their worst, they're like 6-6, 7-5, but like at their best, they're like,
like
10-2.
Even that 2010 Auburn team, I don't know that they win a title in the current format, because that was not a very well coached team. They just Cam Newton put a Superman cape on, but there were several games that year, Trev, where they were lucky to win, and Cam Newton was just able to kind of go out there and
the Iron Bowl that year.
Yeah, I mean, they're down like 24-0 or something crazy like that, you know. But I don't know in today's. I mean, the Oregon game, and that wasn't even one of the better Oregon teams in my opinion. They had the overtime win over Clemson. They had a 3-point win at Mississippi State. They had a 3-point win at Kentucky. They had a set touchdown win over LSU. They, had a 1-point win over Alabama. That's the point that you mentioned. And then the 3-point, somebody would have knocked them off in a 14 playoff, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or a 12-team playoff.
The one thing that you did mention that I want to touch on real quick is the Big 12. I think we agree on the state of the Big 12. Like, they don't have that like elite team. That's why they all kind of like beat each other up type of deal. Like, there's not that like separation. I think if a title contender comes out of the Big 12, it's going to be obvious. Because I think right now, I think the playing field, like the reason why the Big 12 is so competitive is because like you kind of just have a bunch of like 7-5 to 9-3 teams all making up the upper echelon of that conference. That's why it's hard for me to picture them going up against Georgia, going up against an Ohio State, against a Notre Dame. But I do think if eventually it's sometime over this next 10 years, a title contender does emerge from the Big 12, I think it's going to be obvious when you look at like their conference play. It's like you can look at them. It's like, okay, they're just different than
like the way Oklahoma did for those years under Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
The problem for me is I don't see any team capable of doing what Oklahoma did.
Sure.
Like, I don't see a program capable of getting that good. I don't think TCU can be that good. I don't think that, Iowa State, Kansas State went through a time under Bill Self, goodness gracious, under Bill Snyder, excuse me, K-State fans. Not only did I get the wrong guy, I gave the name of Kansas's basketball coach.
I was about to say, ooh.
Bill Snyder. I went 0 for 2 on that one. Bill Snyder did some great. I mean, that was Michael Bishop teams back in the 90s were outstanding. Obviously, you had the Colin Klein team in 2012. Maybe K-State, but like again, those teams are going to have a tougher time in a 12-team playoff because they were teams you hope could get into the BCS title game. And Oklahoma State. They've had some years where I'm like that 2011 Oklahoma State team I would have loved to have seen in a 14 playoff. Would have really liked to see that team in the 12. But that was an anomaly season for Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know that they could have won a couple more. Who knows? But I just don't see that kind of program. Somebody in the chat brought up Nebraska. And I think it's possible, but I don't know that it's possible for Nebraska to win a championship as a Big Ten team. I don't. I think they're just misaligned in a big way.
Yeah. Do you think they should go back to the Big 12?
Oh man, if Nebraska could, I think they'd run back to the Big 12. Like, oh, absolutely, absolutely. They just right now they would have to chop their TV revenue like in half almost,
Yeah.
if not definitely in half.
Yeah.
But I think if all things being equal, I think they would absolutely love to go back to the Big 12. And now in the Big 12, because here's why I say this. Well, what does it matter what league they're in? Here's why it matters. If they go back to the Big 12, they start winning more games. They start becoming the dominant league of that team. They start winning some of the battles in Texas and California and in Florida that they aren't winning now as a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team. Then all of a sudden the program gets more and more talented in a way that allows a program like Nebraska with its tradition and its money, because there's a lot of money in the donor class there, to then go compete for a championship as a Big 12 team. But they would need to be in that league to rise up and become that team where now the kids from Florida. Because remember, where was Tommy? I'm pretty sure Tommy Frazier was from Florida. So, I mean, they did really well in Texas. And then, of course, now all of a sudden, the Xavier Watts type players, you're keeping them in-house. Yeah, Tommy Frazier was from Bradenton, Florida. So, now all of a sudden you're able to start recruiting those big states and having that level of success where, you're going to be able to go out there and have that type of team again. But I don't think you can get to the point where you become a recruiting destination again until you get to the point where you're back in the Big 12. So just a little bit of a reminder of some of the guys who I remember from that 95 team. But I mentioned Tommy Frazier was from Florida. Lawrence Phillips was from California. You had, let's see here, Tony Veland was from Nebraska. Amon Green was from Nebraska. Mike Minner was from Oklahoma. Let's see here. Just trying to remember some of the guys who I remember. Scott Frost was from Nebraska. He was on that team. He didn't start, but he's on that team. I think Brooks Behringer was a guy that passed away, died in a plane crash, I think. But Michael Booker was from California. Let's see here. So you had Jamel Williams was from Indiana. I forgot about that. Amon Green was from Nebraska. That's another thing too. Is Nebraska's not producing these type of players, this much volume of really good players anymore. They're like a lot of those northern Sunbelt, northeastern states that used to be a lot bigger that are no longer that big. Terrell Farley was a really good linebacker. He's from Georgia. They really would recruit all over, Trev, and get players from all over. Florida, Texas. Aaron Graham, their All-American center, was from Texas. Christian Peter, the Peter brothers were both from New Jersey. Jay Foreman was a really good linebacker. He's from Minnesota. It's like they would recruit all over, and because they were a big-time program. Aaron Taylor, another great offensive lineman they had, was from Texas. So like they really would recruit all over. California, Texas, Florida, Jersey, East Coast. I mean, you see all these players from all over, but they had so many great players from the state of Nebraska. Jared Tomich was from Indiana. He was a great player for them back in the day. Grant Wistrom was from Missouri. So like they could really recruit all over. They're not doing that now. And not at the high level. And that's why I just don't think in the Big Ten, they can get back to that level of prominence. If they move back to the Big 12, I think they could.
It's fair. That makes sense. Bisel Hold from Eye on the Ball. You can teach a burner, even as a freshman, to contribute at wide receiver their first year by learning only 3 to 4 plays.
Yeah, you can. It's not true for every kid because some kids just don't really kind of grasp the game and they're not confident or whatever. But in theory, yes, Notre Dame absolutely could have done that with Golden Tate in 2007 and made a mistake not doing so. Yeah, you can. But it's as a niche player that's going to give you 12 to 15 snaps a game. He's not going to be playing. He's not a starter for you. He's not playing 50 snaps a game. You got to be able to do more than 3 or 4 plays if you're going to play full time. But could he help you? Absolutely.
Bisel Hold, we have several sub 4.5 second 40s in the freshman recruits.
It's a good question. Sub 4.5, like real sub 4.5, like actually sub 4.5, not like pretend like everyone is a sub 4.5. Several. What do we count as several, Trev? Is it 3 or more?
Yeah.
All right. So I would say obviously we know Brandon Logan is because he literally timed in the 4.4s at Notre Dame. I think Mark Zachary probably is now. He wasn't early in his career, but I'd be willing to bet you he is now. I have to think that Dallas Golden is close to that. I don't know about any of the receivers. I think probably Scrap Richardson if one was. Elijah Burris is not a sub 4.5 guy. He's a sub 4.6 guy. He's not fast. He's quicker than fast. I don't know that Jadon Blair's sub 4.5. I think he's probably in the 4.5s right now. But I said probably I'll say 3.
It's fair.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And these are the last 2 cards.
Okay. Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. 3 new teams will make the college football playoff this year.
Well, let me pull up my list. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I have 3 new teams. Yeah, exactly 3 new teams. So I buy that. I have a new group of 5. I have a new team from the SEC, 2 new teams from the SEC.
Yeah, I'll buy that as well. Buy. Buy, sell, hold. 3 of the 4 semifinal teams will be the same as this past season.
Sell. I have 2. I have 2 of the same semifinal teams.
I have not made my projected playoff bracket yet, so I'm kind of going off the top of my head. But initially, I want to say buy. Or no, sell. Sorry. Will be the same. Yeah, I'm going to sell that. And then buy, sell, hold. 3 of the 4 semifinal teams will have a first-year starter at quarterback.
Buy. You remember my list, right? So yeah, 3 of my 4.
Yep, I'm buying that as well.
Good one.
Buy, sell, hold from D-Troll Hunter. Bring us home. Both national championship teams' quarterbacks will be a first-year starter.
Buy.
Buy.
This is the thing that's very interesting when people ask me about, what are the team expectations for Notre Dame relative to we haven't seen a lot of first-year starters win and compete for championships in the past. And I'm like, that's a very fair point. But what you got to remember is a lot of the best teams this year are going to have first-year starters. Notre Dame's going to have a first-year starter. Ohio State's going to have a first-year starter. Texas is going to have a first-year starter. We could get into semantics of Dante Moore, but he's going to be a first-time starter on this kind of stage. Alabama's going to have a first-year starter. There's a lot of good football teams this year that are going to have first-year starters at quarterback. And even some of the other good teams have second-year guys at quarterback. There's not like that 5th-year senior quarterback, except for maybe a Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik at Clemson. Drew Aller's going to be a year 3 guy at Penn State. There's not a ton of those. Oh, and Georgia also has a first-year starter at quarterback. That's another team with a first-year starter at quarterback. So I just don't see a lot of the top teams having those kind of quarterbacks. There's just not a lot of that.
Agreed. And the last question of the day, buy, sell, hold. Both title teams will have been semifinal teams last season.
Both title teams will have been sell. Only one of my teams in the championship game was a semifinalist last year. And I'll give you this to you. One of the teams I have in the title game this year wasn't even in the playoff last year. How about them apples? Yeah. We did have a super chat, Trev, that I wanted to bring up also from our guy, Tyler Evans.
Love it. Super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. Who would be a better Big 12 team right now, Missouri or Nebraska?
Who would be a better Big 12 team? Meaning who would be the better team this year? I actually think Nebraska. I'm not sure what I think about Missouri right now. I'm not a big Bo Perbula fan. They lost 2 really good receivers from last year. That's some nice portal pick. Getting Damon Wilson from Georgia was a huge portal pickup. But I just don't think their overall talent on either side of the ball is going to be as good as it was. And so, I know, Trev, I get it. You're a show me guy, and I totally get it. I'm more willing to make some projections. Yes, Nebraska has to prove it, but I'll say this. They have a roster that's very well suited to prove it. How about that? Can you at least go with me on that? on paper, they have a roster that makes it a lot easier to actually be what people think they should be and not what they've been.
No, that's fair. Well, I mean, I was going to go with Nebraska too, but it's not for what Nebraska has shown me. It's for what Missouri has shown me. And it's like they digressed from 23 to 24 with a lot of the same pieces. They still
were
had
a very average-looking 9-3 team last year.
Mm-hmm. Like they just, I don't think Missouri would. I think they're taking a couple steps back. I think they digressed. Now, some of that could be heightened because they are in the SEC, potentially. But then you could also have that same argument with Nebraska in the Big Ten. But, you know, Nebraska has Dylan Raiola coming back for his sophomore season. I like a lot of their portal pickups. To me, Nebraska, it all comes down to Matt Rule. I think you need a specific fit at head coach at Nebraska, and I don't know if he's the guy. And so far through his first 2 years, he hasn't shown me that he is that guy. So maybe 2025 is a season that it turns around. But, yeah, so I am still definitely a show me guy. But from what Missouri has shown me in their digression, on the field, product on the field, I would say it would be Nebraska too. I think they're more suited for a run in the Big 12 than what Missouri would be.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Trev, my man, I believe that is it. No more super chats for today. So that is our first sub 3 hour Bice hold today.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. Good submissions today, guys. As always, not that I'm surprised. Brian and Vince will be back tomorrow. I'm not doing shows the rest of the week. I have a buddy's bachelor party, so I'll be down in Louisville. So any Louisville natives in the chat, let us know of some good restaurants to hit up. So
and we'll get started at 2:00 tomorrow. So just so everybody knows, we have an interview with Marcus Freeman in the morning. The media has there's like 2 different groups. We get to sit down as a group of media people and interview them for like a half an hour and get to talk to them for a little bit. But we can't talk about it or write about it till 2:00. That's when the embargo of whatever we talk about ends. And so we'll probably be in the press or in the meeting until like it won't be a televised. It's like a sit down with him. Won't be televised, and we'll get done around 2-ish, and then we'll obviously come home, get the show ready, and then we'll go live at 2:00 tomorrow to talk about all that. So just so you guys know that that's what we've got planned for tomorrow, for tomorrow's show. So we'll get started at 2:00. We'll have some other topics, but we'll obviously start off with the things that we talked about in Marcus Freeman's press conference tomorrow.
Well, good deal. To make sure you guys are always in the loop and know when they're going live, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Before you head out of here today, please be sure to hit that like button. And whichever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So for Brian, I'm Trev. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.